While the breaststroke kick gets all the love, if swimmers aren't successful and can't execute a great breaststroke pull, they're not going to swim as fast as they otherwise could. The pull is critical to creating speed in breaststroke, and in this video, I'm going to show you strategies that you can use to help your swimmers learn how to execute a great one. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. We're going to cover why the pull is so important. We're going to cover what a great breaststroke pull is. We're going to take a look at really successful swimmers in action. We're going to talk about the challenges of improving the pull. We're going to talk about solutions for improving the pull. And then we're going to go over some sets to show you examples of how to make it happen in practice. Let's check it out. So why does the pull matter? Well, it's 50% of the propulsion, and that's 50% of the speed. So it's a lot less than the other strokes, which can approach 80-90% of the propulsion, but it's still critical. If swimmers struggle to create propulsion with the pull, they're going to struggle to create speed and swim as fast as they otherwise could. Another important aspect is that breaststroke is already a pretty stop-and-go stroke. There's accelerations and then there's slowing. There's accelerations and then there's slowing. And every time swimmers slow down, obviously they're losing speed and they have to use a whole lot more energy to get back up to speed. If the pull is not nearly as effective as it could be, those drops in speed between each kick are going to be a lot higher, which means less speed, obviously, but it's going to make breaststroke a whole lot more fatiguing because swimmers have to create a lot more propulsion to get back up to speed. It's a lot more exhausting to be stop and go swimming as it is to swim the same speed or even a faster speed, but more consistently. And so without a great pull, not only are swimmers going to swim slower, but it's going to be a lot more difficult and a lot more exhausting, which means less endurance. In both cases, that means slow swimming. So what makes a great breaststroke pull? There's two concepts that swimmers have to be really good at and they have to master in order to create a great pull. They have to be really patient and they have to be really aggressive. And so the challenge is it's very difficult to do both of those things at the same time. And that's why it's pretty difficult to swim fast breaststroke. So from a patience perspective, swimmers have to get wide to get great surface area. If they pull with the hands right in front of their face, they're not going to be able to get a great pull because they can't get the arm oriented in a way that allows them to move a lot of water backwards. And because the hands enter right in front of the face instead of wider in butterfly and freestyle, the pull takes more time than the other strokes. And it takes more time in particular to set up the stroke. And the swimmers have to go from right in front of the face to outside the shoulders, and that takes time. If swimmers rush that or they start pulling too soon, they're not going to be in the right position. If they rush the setup, the whole stroke's going to be wrecked because they're not going to be able to move water. They're not going to be in position to do so. And they have to be patient so they can get in a position to use the hand and the forearm to move water. Then, once they are in position, they have to build pressure on the water fast, and they have to continue to build pressure throughout the pull. The pull is relatively short, so swimmers have to get on it right away, and they have to do so very aggressively after they've been patient. So that's where the challenge is they got to be patient with the setup, aggressive with the pull, and they're going to go back and forth between those two, and that's very difficult to do. Swimmers don't have time to get up to speed during the pull because it is shorter than the other strokes. They have to start applying pressure pretty aggressively once they're in position, and if they can do that, they're going to be able to create a lot of propulsion. So we have two very opposite concepts that need to coexist within the same pull. That's what can make breaststroke pulling pretty difficult to pull off successfully. So if we watch this swimmer here from the front, we can see the patience that's needed to set up the stroke. So she's pretty patient, and then she's in position, and now there's that acceleration through. And again, the arms are recovering, and they're entering right in front of the face, and then she's got to be patient and sliding things out, setting things out, and then once she's in position right about here, now you can see the acceleration of the arms. And so if she were to start pulling right away from this position, she's not going to be able to create much propulsion because her arms aren't where they need to be oriented backwards. So she's got to be patient and then set it up. And then right there, now she's going to be aggressive. She's going to start putting more pressure into the water, and that's going to allow her to pull more successfully and more effectively. So if we watch the swimmer here, he's not putting pressure on the water until right about there. And now he's in a position where you can see the forearms facing backwards, the hands are facing backwards, and then he's going to pull back, and that's going to create all that propulsion. So the motion right there is that strong pull backwards, which is going to get him to accelerate forwards and create a lot of propulsion, and that's going to help him effectively move the body down the pool. So again, it's a patient setup, and then get in a position, and then he's going to pull back, and then he's going to let it rip. So in that respect, the breaststroke pull is similar to the other strokes, where you get a big surface area facing backwards, and then you pull it backwards, like right there, and that's where that patience with the setup, getting in position, and now he's going to be able to pull back. The one difference from breaststroke and the other strokes is that the arms aren't going to travel past the shoulders. So once he gets through the big part of the pull, then he's going to squeeze in as opposed to pulling back. And so when swimmers actually pull, that squeezing action is going to be the predominant feeling that they get. So it's more of a setup and then squeeze into the body. However, what's happening is he is pulling back, but it's going to feel more like a squeeze because, again, they're not pulling straight back down to the hips. They've got to pull in towards the back part of the pull in order to recover the arms. Patience with the setup and then applying pressure and squeezing into the body. So another swimmer here, you can see she's going to be a little bit more patient with the setup, getting those arms facing backwards, and then boom, squeezing back, squeezing in, and then recovering straight forward. So again, patience, not so much pressure, and then boom, pressure there, and that's what creates that surge of propulsion that moves her down the pool. So what's the challenge with improving breaststroke pull? Well, the first issue is that timing is really, really, really important in breaststroke. It's really precise, it's really fragile. And so if you're having swimmers experiment with different arm pulls, if you're having them experience with different levels of patience and aggression, different arm paths, it's going to disrupt the timing of the stroke. And when the timing of breaststroke is off, it feels terrible. And swimmers hate doing it. They do not like it. It's very distracting from what you're trying to accomplish if you're trying to improve the pull. And what happens is no matter how they change the pull, no matter how much more effective it is, it's not going to feel right. It's not going to feel good because the overall sensation is that the timing's off, and so the stroke as a whole feels really terrible. And that makes it difficult to improve the pull or the kick for that matter within the context of full stroke breaststroke, because doing so disrupts the rhythm and the timing, and it does so significantly so that everything tends to feel off. Another challenge of the breaststroke pull relative to the other strokes is that there's a lot of extra noise in the stroke relative to freestyle, relative to butterfly, and even relative to backstroke. This setup's going to be different. So when the hands are entering about shoulder width in fly or free, they're entering right in front of the face in breaststroke. And so there's that extra motion that needs to slide out in order to set up the stroke. And that change can make things a little bit more difficult because swimmers have to navigate that extra aspect of the pull. And then the transition after the pull is also different. In the other stroke, swimmers are pulling straight down to their hips. And then in breaststroke, they're transitioning from the shoulders to get the arms forward, to get them recovered forward. And that requires swimmers to change the path of the hands during that transition to the recovery and even before it, so it can be as smooth as possible while still maintaining some propulsion and some pressure on the water that moves them forward. So that's a different skill that's going to be very different than what you see in the other strokes. And as a result, the pull itself is going to feel very different. It's going to feel like there's a lot more lateral motion, and that's because relative to the other strokes, there is a lot more lateral motion. However, a lot of it is about setting up the pull correctly and then transitioning out of the pull correctly. The pull itself is pretty similar, but because of that noise in the beginning of the pull, at the end of the pull, the overall perception of the pull is going to be very different. And what ends up happening is what feels wrong to swimmers is actually going to be right, and what feels right for swimmers is going to be wrong. And so swimmers have to learn how to change that perception when it comes to breaststroke swimming. Last issue is navigating the breath. If the breath timing is off, if the breath timing isn't quite right, if the breath itself is too high or too low, that can also impact the pull because the breath and the pull are happening at more or less the same time. So if there's a problem with the breath, that's going to influence the arm action. And if that influence is negative, well, then it's going to be more difficult to improve the pull because of the breath. So the breaststroke pull presents some pretty unique challenges relative to the other strokes. And these are challenges we have to overcome if we want to help swimmers improve their pull. So how do we do that? Well, we have to take the timing out of the equation. We have to help swimmers understand and feel what it's like to pull breaststroke effectively as opposed to the other strokes. And we have to navigate the challenge of the breath. And so we're going to use several different strategies here, some specific drills. We're going to use some specific activities that allow swimmers to explore their pull. And then we're going to challenge it in different ways with performance and resistance to help swimmers learn how to move more water and how to do so in a way that helps them swim faster. First up is side wall pull. And like we discussed earlier, the pull is more of a squeeze than a pull, and that's what it's going to feel like to swimmers because of that extra lateral motion. And so we have to help swimmers feel that. With side wall pull, what they're literally going to do is they're going to practice that squeezing position and that squeezing feeling in order to create more sensory awareness of what they're doing and what they have to do. It helps them learn how to use the whole arm, to use the hand and the forearm to create propulsion, and to learn what it feels like to squeeze into the body versus straight back. What I really like about this particular activity is that it's ultimately very practical. It can be done anytime, it can be done anywhere, and it's pretty much impossible for swimmers to mess up. And that means it tends to be pretty successful in helping swimmers understand what they need to do. So this is side wall pull. So they're going to be on the side, they're going to have their arm on the wall, and they're going to pull straight down, trying to squeeze the arm into the body. And so what they're doing is they're feeling how to create pressure on the hand and the forearm, and they're learning how to squeeze into the body versus just pulling back. To challenge it in a little bit different way, you can have them move the body up and down on the wall to kind of feel a little bit more of a dynamic squeeze, and you can just have them do it statically as well. The idea here is to let them feel that position and to feel that basic movement and feel what it's like to create pressure in that way. That allows them to get a good sense of what they need to accomplish when they actually execute the pull. Next up is sculling. And with breaststroke, there's a lot of directional change within the pull. And we want swimmers to be able to effectively manage those directional changes and move water over longer distances. And to do so, they have to manage pressure throughout those transitions. So as swimmers slide out and then into the setup of the stroke, they want to hold on to pressure and then build pressure as they start to execute the pull, and then hang on to that pressure as long as possible through the pull as they start to transition to the recovery. And sculling is really effective, not because we're trying to get swimmers to scull when they execute the breaststroke pull, but because sculling is a great way to manage pressure. So by going in and out and working those transitions, swimmers have to learn how to keep pressure as they go from out to in and in to out. And so you can work specific breaststroke positions, you can work general positions, you can work different hand speeds, you can work different body speeds. So fast hands, you can go really slow hands, you can be moving fast through the water, you can be not moving at all, it can be stationary sculling. There's lots of different options. And it's not so much, again, about building a breaststroke pull. It's about building the general ability to learn how to manage pressure and control pressure. And that's a skill that's required to effectively execute a breaststroke pull. And any sculling positions you like, any different types of sculling that you enjoy, you find effective, those are all fair game. They're all useful for this purpose. So here's one position that you can use. Again, trying to manage transitions, manage pressure as he goes from out to in and in to out. So same thing here, just a different position, and now the hands are out in front as opposed to facing down towards the bottom of the pool. Same concept, managing pressure through those transitions. Next strategy is to change the legs. So by removing the breaststroke kick, we remove the timing demands. It allows us to train the upper body without wrecking the stroke because swimmers can just focus on the pull and they don't have to worry about timing everything well. Secondly, it takes away the propulsion, or most of the propulsion that swimmers get from the legs, so now the arms have to do all the work. There's two big options here. One is you can use a dolphin kick, or you can use a flutter kick. The advantage of the dolphin kick is you got bigger range of rates. It's pretty easy to go at pretty slow rates, and it's also pretty easy to go at pretty fast rates. The other advantage is that it's more similar to regular breaststroke and that the rhythm is similar. There's more of a lunge to the recovery, and there's an undulation to the general pattern as swimmers move through the water. You can also use the flutter kick. It's more conducive to really high stroke rates, and that means you can have swimmers learn to practice and execute the pull with a lot more aggression, which can be really useful if you're helping swimmers learn how to hold water, how to have an effective pull at higher speeds. This is breast with dolphin kick here, and so you can see the legs are just kind of trailing behind. There's a little bit of a flick to the legs, but swimmers aren't breaststroke kicking. That allows him to keep working on moving forwards, and he's really got to pull effectively in order to move himself forward because he doesn't have the breaststroke kick to drive him forward. So now we got the flutter kick here, and you can see there's going to be a little bit more of an aggressive recovery, and once the pull goes, there's going to be more aggression to it because he's got to get everything forward. There's not going to be as much up and down motion. It's going to be a flatter stroke, and he's really focusing on getting through the pull a little bit more faster, recovering the arms faster, and transitioning through the back part of the pull faster in order to get back out in front and get everything moving forwards. Next strategy is to change the breath. And so by changing the head position, it alters what the pull feels like, and it alters what swimmers experience during the pull. The lower the head is, the more it's going to feel like swimmers are just pulling back, and the higher the head is, the more there will be an in-feel to the pull. And so it's not that one is better or worse. Both are effective because we do want swimmers to have a backwards pull. They need to move themselves forwards, and they need to feel the in part so that they don't get stuck and they optimize that transition to the recovery. And so by having swimmers breathe in different ways, we can help them figure out all the different aspects of the pull, and we can help them do so more effectively and faster. I like to use a lot of different head positions in order to help swimmers feel and find and figure out what's the best way to pull. And by having them explore and challenging them in different ways, it's a lot easier to do that. So you can go head up breaststroke, you can go head down breaststroke, you can go normal breaststroke, you can go alternating head up, so one stroke up, one stroke normal. You can go alternating down, so one stroke down, one stroke normal, or you can go head up and then no breath, head up and then no breath. They're all effective and they all help swimmers feel different aspects of the pull, and it helps them feel what's going to be most successful for them. So this is head up breaststroke, and for swimmers, it's going to feel very much like an in stroke. And of course, you can do this with the breaststroke kick, you can do this with the dolphin kick, or you can do this with a flutter kick. Very much, they're going to feel the inward aspect of the pull, and so when you want to exaggerate that, this is a great way to do that. In contrast, you can have swimmers pull with the head down, and it's going to feel them like the elbows and the pull is much more backwards in nature. And so again, that can be an aspect of the pull that you want to emphasize and you want swimmers to explore. And when that's the case, you can have them keep the head down and really focus on that part of the pull. Again, either with the dolphin kick, breaststroke kick, or a flutter kick. Next strategy is to add a pull or two to regular breaststroke. So to swim fast breaststroke, swimmers have to be able to pull and kick. So while taking the legs away allows swimmers to work on the skill of pulling, they also have to learn the skill of pulling while actually swimming while they have the kick in place as well. And so this strategy allows for the best of both worlds. You can continue to overload the pull because there's more pulls than kicks, but it also helps swimmers learn to transition how to fit their pull in to their full stroke swimming. If you want to work more on the pull itself, you just add more pulls per kicks. If you want swimmers to learn more about the specificity about how to actually pull when they swim, you just go fewer pulls per kick. Both are really effective. Both are really great at helping swimmers learn both how to pull more effectively and how to integrate that pull into the swim more effectively. So this is 3 pulls, 1 kick. So as you can see, he's taking multiple pulls and then he adds in the kick. So 1, 2, and then 3. So as you can see here, the swimmer's kind of just dragging their legs. I usually let them use a light dolphin kick in order to keep the hips up, in order to keep everything moving. In any case, they're doing more pulls per kick, and then they've got to learn how to transition into the actual kicking stroke, and that's going to set them up to improve both the pull and how to use the pull during regular breaststroke. So same concept here, except now we've got 2 pulls for 1 kick. So 1, and then 2, and again, light dolphin kick is usually going to be effective here. If you really want to stress the arms, you can just have them do almost no kick, and that's going to really put more pressure on the upper body. Next up is the use of resistance, and that can be really powerful for 3 different reasons. First of all, it improves skill, and so swimmers have to create more propulsion, and they have to create more effective propulsion. They have to create more propulsion to move themselves forward, and if that propulsion is going down or to the side, that's not going to move them forward either. And so they have to create more propulsion, and they're encouraged to make sure that more of that propulsion is effective at moving them forward. It also provides great feedback. The extra resistance changes what swimmers feel, and they tend to feel a lot more pressure on the arms, and that allows them to feel when they're losing that pressure, when they're getting really good pressure, and it helps encourage them to figure out what's going to allow for the most pressure and allow them to move forward as effectively as possible. Better feedback, faster learning, and so the feedback is enhanced by using resistance as well. And of course, you need strength in order to execute a great breaststroke pull, and so by using resistance in the water, swimmers are going to get physical changes that allow them to develop strength faster because they have more specific resistance work in the water. And the more strength they can create in the water, the faster they can go because they're going to have better skills and they're going to have the strength to execute those skills at a really high level. Finally, with all of those strategies, regardless of which ones you use, I always suggest asking for performance. You can ask for speed, have them build, have them descend, have them just go fast. You can ask them to hit certain stroke counts, whether that's low, that's high, that's everything in between. You can ask them to hit certain stroke rates, whether that's low, that's high, and everything in between. And of course, you can combine that. Stroke counts with speed, stroke rates with speed, and challenge them to find higher levels of performance regardless of what strategy you're using, regardless of the drill. The only way they can do that is by learning to pull more effectively and learning to pull better. They can't go faster at the same stroke count by swimming more poorly. And so it's a great way to encourage swimmers to swim better and to swim with better skills. And of course, they're going to be developing the fitness to actually sustain these skills and execute them at really high levels in races. And there's tons of different ways to make this happen. All it takes is a little creativity, and any training set is usually going to work towards this. And by using these different performance expectations, you can really challenge swimmers to improve their skills and to swim better. This first set is more skill oriented. They're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 4 times, 30 seconds on, 15 seconds off of vertical sculling. And they're just going to have the arms up at the surface. The odds are big, slow sculls. The evens are small, fast sculls. You're just trying to maintain pressure throughout the entire time. Then they're going to go 825s breaststroke, take fewer strokes in pairs. The odds are with flutter kick. The evens are with dolphin kick. So regardless of the kick, they have to be more efficient. They have to get more out of each stroke. They got to get longer. And before each one of those repetitions, they're going to go 5 seconds of side wall pull with each arm. And that's going to allow them to feel that pressure on the arm, feel that squeeze before they do those repetitions. Then they're going 450s, 2 pulls, 1 kick. The odds are 25 alternating head up plus 25 alternating head down, and the evens are flipped. So by changing the breaths, swimmers are going to have more awareness of that squeeze in and that squeeze back when they pull, and they're going to descend 1 to 4 at the same stroke count. And by doing that, we're encouraging them to get more out of each pull without sacrificing any speed. So lots of different technical challenges here, all geared towards helping swimmers learn how to hold more water, how to be more effective with the pull so that they can go faster in races. Next set has a little bit more of an endurance feel, so they're going to go 3 100s and 350s, 4 rounds. The 50s are always 25 2 pulls, 1 kick, 25 breaststroke, and they're going to descend 1 to 3 at the same stroke count. So we're going 2 pulls, 1 kick, overload the arms a little bit, and then swimming actual breaststroke. And each round, they're going to add a stroke, and they're going to go faster. To set those 50s up, we're going to go 3 100s pull, and it's always second 50 fewer strokes. And we're going to do those hundreds in a little bit different way each time. By having swimmers take fewer strokes the second half, as they get a little bit more tired, they have to be really efficient. They have to move a lot of water. They have to be good with their skills the second half. First 3 are with a dolphin kick, and then we're going to alternate flutter kick and dolphin kick, and then we're going to alternate dolphin kick and 3 pulls, 1 kick, and then alternate dolphin kick and 2 pulls, 1 kick. So we're changing the challenge each time, but again, it's all about efficiency, and swimmers have to hold together the skills as they get tired, which is also going to help them build the fitness to execute those skills under pressure. Last set is more of a speed set. We're going to go 2 rounds through. They're going to go breaststroke with flutter kick. The first one is as fast as possible at 1.30 seconds per cycle. So with a tempo trainer, of course, adjust the stroke rate for your swimmer and for the context. The rate should be a little bit slower than what they would normally go for fast swimming. The idea here is for them to focus on getting as long as possible, because if they can't move their arms faster and they have to swim faster, the only way they can go faster is by getting longer. So on those odd ones, it's always with that stroke count restriction. The first ones, we're going to go with flutter kick, and then dolphin kick, and then 2 pulls, 1 kick. And after that, they can move the arms as fast as they want, and they should be able to go faster than what they did with that controlled stroke count. So those are all pull-based, so swimmers have to learn how to create speed, create length while they're pulling. And then with the 2 pulls, 1 kick, we'll add the breaststroke kick in while still working on the arms, and then we'll do the same thing with regular breaststroke, again, trying to get long and fast on the first one, and then just letting it rip going fast on number 2. To overload the upper body even more on that first round, they're going to be swimming against resistance, so they're going to get more feedback about how they're creating pressure, and they're going to have to be more effective at creating propulsion in order to move themselves forward down the pool. Pulling a breaststroke can be a challenging skill, but with the right strategies, we can help swimmers develop that skill and develop their fitness all at the same time. The kick drives the stroke in breaststroke, and in this video, I'm going to show you my favorite strategies for consistently and reliably building better breaststroke kicks. To build an effective breaststroke kick, first we need to understand the importance of the breaststroke kick. The more belief there is about why it's important, the better the results. Next, we'll take a look at the principles that underlie effective breaststroke kicking. In order to build a better kick, we need to understand what we're trying to accomplish. Next, we'll take a look at the challenges associated with building a better breaststroke kick, and that way we can design interventions that overcome those challenges. Then we'll take a look at some of my favorite activities to improve breaststroke kicking, as well as my favorite strategies to make those activities even more effective. Finally, we'll cap it off with some sets to illustrate these concepts that you can either implement or modify to help your swimmers improve their breaststroke kicking. Let's dive in. So why does the kick matter, especially in breaststroke? At a basic level, less propulsion equals less speed, and that's particularly true in breaststroke because the kick contributes more propulsion as a percentage of the entire stroke than any other stroke. Without a strong kick, there's going to be a huge drop in propulsion, a huge drop in speed between the arm pulls. And so the swimmers are going to be slowing down and speeding up, Not only is that not great for swimming fast, it's extremely tiring. So swimmers are going to swim slower while creating more fatigue if their kick isn't up to par. If you watch solid breaststrokers, it's very difficult to be an effective breaststroker without a competent kick. It doesn't necessarily have to be an amazing kick, but it does have to be competent, and that's something that's seen at pretty much anyone who can swim solid breaststroke. So how do swimmers actually create propulsion with the legs in breaststroke? The main goal is to move as much water backward as possible, as fast as possible with each and every kick. To do that, swimmers need to create a large surface area using the shin and the foot to move water backwards. They need to optimize the duration of that kick, so they want to maintain that surface area for as long as possible throughout the kick, and they need to accelerate the limb throughout the kick to maintain pressure on the water and increase the amount of propulsion that's created. And if swimmers can accomplish all three, they're going to move a lot of water backwards, and they're going to have an effective kick. And from a strategy standpoint, it's pretty simple. They need to turn the feet out, they need to keep those feet wider than the knees, and they need to keep them in those positions for as long as possible while kicking straight backwards. It's not a particularly complicated action. However, that doesn't mean it's necessarily easy to do. So we'll take a look at a breaststroker here. And as you can see, those feet are turned out. They're pointed towards the sides of the pool, and they're wider than the knees. The ankles are maybe in line or maybe slightly outside the knees. So that means the whole foot is outside the knee. And then from that position, it's pretty much a backwards kick. So again, it's all about an effective setup where as much surface area is facing backwards as possible. So right there, the whole foot's facing backwards, some of the shins facing backwards, and from that position, they're kicking straight backwards, and they're holding those positions for as long as possible. So you can see the feet are out wide, and they stay pretty wide all the way till the end of the kick when they pretty much run out of range of motion. So a big surface area, a long range of motion, and then if we watch here, you're going to see the setup is patient, and then boom, the feet accelerate through the back of the kick, and that's going to maintain pressure on the water. So again, big surface area, long range of motion, and an acceleration of the leg throughout the kick. We're going to watch two different swimmers here, and what you'll see is that one kick is a little bit more narrow on the right, one kick is a little bit wider on the left, but if you watch, both swimmers have their feet turned out, both swimmers have their feet wide, and both swimmers are going to kick straight back. And so if you watch both swimmers, the one on the right's a little bit ahead, so feet are out there, kicking straight back, and then the feet are out here, and they're also kicking straight back. The swimmer on the left has a wider kick than the swimmer on the right, but both swimmers are still executing those same basic principles of creating a big surface area, holding that surface area throughout the kick, and kicking straight back with accelerating limb speed. So it's the principles that matter, and different swimmers are going to use a slightly different strategy based upon their structure. And those differences in structure brings us to one of the major challenges of improving breaststroke kicking. There isn't a perfect kick that's going to apply equally to everyone. While the principles apply to everyone in terms of big surface area, big range of motion, and big acceleration, swimmers are going to need to do different things in order to best accomplish those goals for them. They've got different tools. There's different limb length, there's different joint range of motion, they have different levels of strength, they have different levels of endurance. And all these factors interact to produce different kicking variations. So we have to find solutions that work for a given swimmer rather than just trying to have everyone adhere to a specific model. Another major challenge with breaststroke kicking is it's a very unnatural skill that many swimmers struggle with. There's nothing that we do on land, there's no other actions in life that are anything like breaststroke kicking, and so it's not a natural thing. It's not really a human movement that we would otherwise engage in, and so while the concept is simple, the application is not, because it's very counterintuitive to most swimmers, and they simply don't have much practice moving the body in the ways that are demanded by breaststroke kicking. So having discussed why breaststroke kicking is so important, the principles behind effective breaststroke kicking, as well as the challenge of helping swimmers learn effective breaststroke kicking, let's dive into the solutions. I'm going to go over 3 different kicking activities that I found really helpful to improve breaststroke kicking, and then I'm going to go over 3 strategies that you can use with any of these activities to further accelerate the development of an effective breaststroke kick. The first strategy is vertical breaststroke kicking. So by changing the orientation of the body from horizontal to vertical, we can change the perspective, and if we can change the perspective, we can change the perception. So many swimmers struggle with a quick and effective setup of the kick. Vertically, they've got to set up the kick quick or they're going to start to sink. Many swimmers struggle with a backward orientation of the kick, and with vertical kicking, they need to kick straight down or they're going to start to sink. And many swimmers also struggle with accelerating the kick, and again, if swimmers don't accelerate the kick, they're going to sink. So to keep the head above the water, swimmers have to engage with all these skills in a way that's not necessarily demanded when they're kicking on a board, or kicking on their back, or they're moving horizontal through the water. And it's really easy to add further challenges to vertical kicking by simply adding resistance or altering the kick rate, both of which we'll talk about later. Vertical breaststroke kicking is pretty straightforward. You just have the swimmers vertical and you just have them kick straight down. The higher the hands are out of the water, the more challenging it's going to be. So you can just have them go arms across the chest. You can have them hold the hands out like this swimmer, or you can even have them go in streamline if you want a real challenge. So again, the main goal is to kick breaststroke and keep the head up, and they're going to execute great skills if they just follow those instructions. The next series of activities that I really like are either 2 kick 1 pull, 3 kick 1 pull, or 4 kick 1 pull. And so a great kick needs to be integrated in the stroke. You want to avoid situations where swimmers are really effective on a board, but really struggle to integrate the kick into their swimming. So with these drills, swimmers can improve their kicking skills in the context of breaststroke. They can also overload the legs, the physical capacities of the kick, in the context of breaststroke as well. And so for that reason, they can be really, really useful in addition to more pure kicking activities. And so these drills form a bridge from those pure kicking activities to full stroke swimming. And then you can either emphasize the kick or the integration, depending on the specific strategy, the specific activity that you choose to use. For instance, 4 kicks, 1 pull, it's going to be a lot more emphasis on the kick itself. And then 2 kicks, 1 pull, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on integrating the kick. So this is 3 kicks, 1 pull. So the swimmer is going to take 1 pull, and then they're going to take 3 kicks. And so they're going to be in line taking those kicks, and then they're going to come up, and they're going to integrate that first kick into the rhythm of the stroke, and then add the extra kicks after that. And so again, you can have them go 2 kicks between each pull, or you can have them go 4 kicks between each pull. You can certainly do more than that, but at some point it becomes more of a hypoxic challenge than you probably want. And again, the point is to learn to integrate the kick into regular full stroke swimming. And so you don't want to have too many kicks in between the pulls. But regardless, it's a really effective activity for 1, developing the kick, and 2, helping swimmers learn to integrate kick timing into their stroke. When it comes to actual kicking, I prefer to have swimmers use a lot of different kicking positions in order to fully develop the breaststroke kick. So by kicking in different positions, they have to manage the kick and execute the kick in slightly different ways. Each position is going to stress the legs in different ways, and that's going to help swimmers build a more complete kick. You can have swimmers kick on the stomach versus the back. You can have them have their arms overhead in streamline or by the side. You can have them have their head up. You can have them have their head down with a snorkel. You can use a kickboard. You can use no kickboard. And obviously you can combine these different strategies in different ways. Each way is going to put pressure on a slightly different aspect of the kick, and that's going to help swimmers develop more skill in different areas of the kick. And the more complete their kick is, the more complete their skills are, the more effective they're going to be overall at breaststroke. So by switching it up, by varying the type of kicking you do, you're much more likely to develop a more complete breaststroke kick. You can emphasize 1 or 2 of these different kicking positions. However, I still try to include all the different variations in some form, even for really small amounts of volume, in order to get a little bit more variety. When it comes to creating more propulsion, using resistance is going to be effective for pretty much every skill, and that's certainly no less true in breaststroke kicking. And so swimmers have to create more propulsion to overcome the added resistance. And then the resistance also encourages swimmers to kick more directly backwards. As we talked about before, an effective kick is all about moving a lot of water backwards. In order to do that, they got to kick backwards. Another really great benefit of the resistance is it helps swimmers feel the pressure they're creating on the water with the legs. And so that awareness can help their skills. And if they're kicking backwards and all of a sudden they feel a loss of pressure, they're much more likely to correct that when they can feel it. And the extra resistance is going to make it much more likely that they can feel that and then make that change. And of course, extra resistance provides extra load. Extra load leads to more strength in the legs. More strength in the legs means swimmers can create more propulsion. They can learn to accelerate the limbs faster while still holding the same amount of water with the feet. So for all these reasons, resistance training is really effective. And so you can either use it in terms of resisted swimming, where they're kicking against a parachute, kicking against pulleys, kicking against a stretch cord, it doesn't really matter. Or you can actually resist the feet themselves and put drag socks on the feet, which is going to create a very different stimulus, but also a very beneficial stimulus. And so you can vary the type of resistance that you use, so you can vary the types of resistance to get better skill development as well. Our next strategy is kick count. And I talk a lot about using stroke count in various swimming activities, and kick count, especially with breaststroke kicking, is particularly effective as well. And so you're going to demand efficiency of the kick. They have to learn how to get more out of each kick when they have kick count requirements that they have to meet. it also provides an objective measurement, and it's a second way to measure progress. Obviously, we're keeping track of speed, and so if we're keeping track of kick counts as well, now swimmers have two different ways to improve, and they have two very different ways to improve. The more performance feedback that they get, the faster they're going to learn. And another great aspect of having an objective measurement is swimmers actually have to change their kick in order to get a different kick count. And so sometimes they think they're making a change, but if the numbers don't change, the change isn't significant enough. And so swimmers have to go back and they have to make a more dramatic change in order to get the kick count to change. And having an objective measurement can be really powerful for encouraging swimmers to do something different. And when you add speed to kick count requirements, they're even more effective. So things like descending at the same kick count, minimizing kick count and time, or going as fast as possible at a given kick count, these are all really great ways to help swimmers learn how to build speed and length in the same activities. And if they can learn to kick longer, they can learn to kick faster. That means they're going to have a really effective breaststroke kick. And by using kick counts, you can start to measure some of this stuff, make it more objective, and really encourage swimmers to change. Our last strategy is kick rate. It's actually similar to kick count in that it requires swimmers to create more length per kick. They just need to create as much speed as they can at a given kick rate. It's particularly effective when paired with speed expectations. And so if you have swimmers descend at the same kick rate or go as fast as possible at a given kick rate, the only way they can improve in those two tasks is by being more effective with each kick, getting longer with each kick, because they can't move the feet faster. But if they can be more effective with each kick, they'll be able to kick faster. So this strategy is a really great complement to kick count. Again, it's objective, and it really encourages swimmers to find more effective ways of executing their kicking. So how do we actually put these different solutions, these different strategies into practice with specific sets? Well, let's take a look exactly how to do that. So this set is more of a skill set. They're going to go 3 rounds through. Each round is going to go 425s breaststroke kick, 425s 3 kicks 1 pull, 425s 2 kicks 1 pull, and then 425s breaststroke. And each of those 425s, they're going to take one less kick or one less stroke per 25. So they have to learn how to create more efficiency, get more out of each kick. And the first round they have a parachute, second round they have drag socks, third round they have no resistance. So there's no speed requirements here, but swimmers have to learn how to get more efficient, and they have to do so while overcoming the resistance in the first 2 rounds and then without resistance in the last round. And the resistance changes, so it's going to be a little bit different feel between the first and the second round. And so the goal here is to move from pure kicking and then build our way into regular breaststroke. And they're still trying to be more and more efficient as they go, taking one less kick for the first 3 sections and then one less stroke for the 4th section of each round. Ultimately, the idea here is really encouraging swimmers to figure out how to get more out of each kick. And to do that, they're going to have to overcome the resistance and create more propulsion. Second set here is more of an endurance-based kick set. And what we're going to do is use several different kicking positions. We're also going to have swimmers descend at the same kick rate. So they have to, again, be more effective with each kick. They can't move the feet faster, but they have to get faster. So that means they have to find a way to have a more effective kick. The first piece, they're going to go 350s breaststroke kick on the back, descend 1 to 3 to strong at the same kick rate. Then they're going to go 50 breaststroke kick on the back, very strong, and then a 50 breaststroke strong. The next section is done the same way, except they're going to kick on a board with a snorkel. The next section's on the back, but now they're in streamline. And then the last section is kick on a board, but without a snorkel. Each piece is done the same way. They're trying to be more and more effective with the kick and then create some speed on those last 2 50s. Do the whole thing twice, and what you can do is increase the kick rate on the second round and then expect swimmers to go faster. So finding ways to be more effective and more efficient with the kick, and then challenging the kick in a lot of different positions to build a broader base of skill, and then trying to put that all together with some strong breaststroke kick and some strong breaststroke swimming. Our last set is more of a speed-based set, and they're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 4 times, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, vertical kick with drag socks. That's fast. They've got to create a lot of downward propulsion, and they've got to do it against the resistance of the drag socks. And they're going to go 425s breaststroke kick with a board and drag socks, minimize kick count and time. And then 425s odds, 4 kicks, 1 pull with drag socks, even regular breaststroke with drag socks, minimize stroke count and time as well, and then a 50 breaststroke fast. And they'll repeat that the second section, except now they're going 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off on the vertical kick, which is going to allow them to put more gas into it, to go harder effort, to go faster. And then on the 425s, the odds are minimized stroke count and time, the evens are fast. And then on the next section, instead of going 4 kicks, 1 pull, they're going 3 kicks, 1 pull. Last round, they're going to go 10 on, 50 off. So now they can go really fast on the vertical kick. The 425s are all fast for the breaststroke kick. and then they're going 2 kicks, 1 pull instead of 3 kicks, 1 pull on the 425s, and we'll finish off with another 50 breaststroke fast. So we go from vertical kicking to kicking on a board to drilling and swimming. We've got drag stocks throughout that whole thing, so they're going to have to be really effective with creating propulsion, and we're using kick counts and we're using time in order to create more pressure on performance, making sure that they're creating speed and efficiency at the same time, and then swimmers can put it all together with a 50 breaststroke fast. So challenging swimmers kick in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of novelty and there's a lot of pressure on executing really great kicks from different perspectives. So it's a great way to really encourage swimmers to create more propulsion with each kick. More propulsion with each kick means faster breaststroke kicking. Faster breaststroke kicking means faster breaststroke swimming. So we've gone over why breaststroke kicking is so important. We've gone over how swimmers can create a lot of propulsion, which is by moving a lot of water backwards. And they can do that by creating a big surface area, maintaining that surface area through a long range of motion, and accelerating the kick. We've talked about how swimmers need to find individual solutions based upon their own structure, and we've gone over strategies that help them do that. Between vertical kicking, between adding extra kicks while swimming, and between kicking in different positions, we have different activities that can really help swimmers learn to kick more effectively. And by using resistance, kick counts, and kick rates, we can really challenge swimmers to perform in those different activities and encourage them to create more propulsion with each kick. More than any other stroke, breaststroke creates a ton of resistance, and that's why breaststroke is the slowest stroke. Well, that means there's a lot of opportunities to make mistakes and swim slower. There's also a lot of opportunity to make improvements in alignment, and that's going to result in a lot more speed. So if your swimmers are trying to improve their breaststroke, rather than just trying to pull or kick more effectively, they need to focus on their alignment if they want to improve their breaststroke speed. And just like with every skill, it's going to take a systematic approach if you really want to create improvement and you want to see progress. You can't just do 1 or 2 drills. You have to understand what's happening, why it's important, the key skills involved, what are the challenges in helping swimmers improve that skill, and then we're using several different solutions in combination in order to create the change that you're looking for. When you want to create a change, you have to know what you're trying to accomplish, the strategies you're going to use, and then build that into your training. I'm going to show you how to make it happen to improve horizontal alignment in breaststroke. So why does horizontal alignment matter in breaststroke? Well, breaststroke creates more resistance than any other stroke. That's why it's the slowest of all the strokes, and that's why it requires more energy than any other stroke. Resistance slows breaststrokers down, and it makes breaststroke a lot harder. Well, that's obviously not good news. The flip side is, because the resistance is so high, if you can help swimmers eliminate even just a little bit of their resistance by improving their alignment, they're going to go a lot faster. And it's going to be free speed in the sense that it actually makes swimming easier rather than harder. If they were to learn how to get a more powerful pull, that will improve their speed, but it requires more energy in order to execute that pull. If you can help them be more streamlined, more aligned, well, now it's going to be actually easier to swim breaststroke, so they're going to be faster and they're going to be able to hold it together more because they're not going to use as much energy. That's a double win. The better their alignment is, the less resistance they have, the more speed they're going to have, and the more endurance they're going to have, again, because swimming is easier. So if swimmers can improve this skill, there's a lot of benefits in terms of going faster in competition. So what is it? Well, breaststrokers need to establish a horizontal position in between each stroke cycle. They want to be level, flat on the surface. They want to be as straight as possible. Just like when you put your hand out the window, if you have it pointed straight up, there's going to be a ton of resistance. If you have it straight, there's going to be a lot less resistance. And the same principle applies here with breaststrokers. They want to get straight after each stroke cycle. They need to return to that position and establish that position in between each stroke. Then they want to deviate from that position as little as possible. So they don't want the hips to drop low. They don't want to come up super high. The hips have to stay in line. They want to try to minimize the impact of the breath on their body position. Now, obviously, they have to breathe, and there's going to be some impact, but the smaller it is, the less resistance they'll create, the more effective and the faster they're going to go. Now, to recover the kick, they're going to have to bring their legs forward. The longer they can wait to do that, the less resistance they're going to create as well, because when they do that, it's necessary to get a great kick, but it's kind of like putting on the brakes. So if they do it slow and they do it for a long period of time, well, they're creating more resistance than they have to. And the last key aspect is they have to, no matter how fast they're going, no matter what their stroke rate is, they got to get back into alignment. They got to get straight in between each stroke cycles. Even when swimmers are sprinting at the highest level, they're getting back into alignment. Even if it's only for 1/10 of a second, they're doing it between each stroke cycle. So we've gone over why it matters and what it is. Let's check out what it looks like. So we'll watch two swimmers here, one swimming over 200 meters and one swimming over 100 meters. So you can see how the same principles apply, even though the rates are going to be dramatically different. So if we watch this swimmer here, you can see he's taking his pull, and look how long those legs are. He's not rushing the kick up. He's keeping everything in his line as long as possible. And second thing too, when he takes this breath here, watch how the hips don't drop. Everything stays right up at the surface, even when he comes up with the body. So his leg comes fast here, and then he gets out of that position. And again, now he's back into alignment after the stroke. So he's not extending the length of the breath. When he does breathe, he keeps the hips up. And then the last aspect of it is when he recovers the legs, he waits to do so and then does so really fast in order to minimize the time that he's in those positions. So the key thing here is that he's going to get back into alignment right here in between each stroke cycle. So those are the really important aspects of it, is minimizing any loss of alignment and then reestablishing and getting back into this great alignment in between each stroke to ensure that he keeps his resistance he's creating as low as possible. Now let's check out the same skills in a swimmer over 100 meters. And so right here, you can see she's back into alignment. Her hips are up, her head's down. She's not pausing, she's not gliding at all, but she's finding a way to get back into that position. And then when she breathes there, watch the hips. They don't really drop at all. If anything, they might come up a little bit. And so she's maintaining alignment through the breath as well. Next aspect is, so she's starting her pull. Watch how long it takes for her to recover the legs. She's minimizing the amount of time she does that, and she's minimizing the resistance she creates when she creates that setup and recovers the legs. So again, gets back into alignment there. Everything's straight on the surface. Even at a really high stroke rate, you can see her stroke rate's high, but she's getting back into it really fast. She's not losing position of the hips when she breathes, and she's recovering the legs fast to minimize the impact of the leg recovery on the resistance that she creates. So even at really high stroke rates, probably almost twice as what the previous swimmer was using, she's able to demonstrate and establish those same skills. So the more swimmers can maintain their alignment and the more they can get back into alignment with each stroke, the more effective they're going to be at minimizing resistance and creating a lot of speed. So what makes improving alignment so difficult? The biggest idea is that it's about subtraction rather than addition. You're trying to remove unnecessary movements as opposed to add necessary or better movements. And so while creating propulsion is about more, minimizing resistance is about less. It's about what not to do. And that's generally not how we think about movement. It's always a goal-oriented thing where we're trying to do something. In this case, we're trying to get rid of things. Alignment's also subtle. Small changes can make a big difference. A small change in hip position can make a big difference. A small change in the breath can make a big difference. And a lot of times, they're really small. And it's something that you as a coach can't even necessarily see. But swimmers have to learn how to feel it. And if they can feel it, then they can change it. They can influence it. The third challenge is that alignment is individual. The skill, the principle is always going to be the same, but different swimmers are going to have to find slightly different solutions. If swimmers have different limb lengths, if they have different limb masses, if they have different distribution of the mass, they have different sizes of the lungs, they float differently, these are all factors that are going to influence, perhaps subtly but significantly, how swimmers move through the water and what they have to do to optimally manage their alignment to minimize their resistance. So while the principles apply equally to all swimmers, the particular solutions may not apply in the same exact way. And so swimmers are going to have to find those solutions, and you can't necessarily know exactly what they are ahead of time. So that's another big challenge that we have to overcome if we want to help swimmers improve their alignment. So let's talk solutions. We're going to have to overcome the challenges that we just discussed. Swimmers are going to have to think about what to not do, what to get rid of. They're going to have to become aware of the subtlety, and they're going to have to figure out individually appropriate solutions. In order to do that, we can't just add a couple drills. We have to take a systematic approach. We got to think about what we have to help swimmers feel. We have to challenge them and help them execute those skills under pressure. And then we have to build that into sets that are going to develop their skills and their fitness. A full-scale attack on the skill is what's going to be required. So let's take a look at how to make that happen. The first drill we're going to talk about is ball float to X float. So this is a floating drill, a static drill. The idea here is that swimmers are going to need to learn how to use their lungs, how to leverage their lungs in order to create support in the water and to hold a more horizontal position. They're also going to have to learn how to control their legs in order to lift the legs up at the surface. They have to manage that position while moving the limbs back and forth, and that's going to create a really great challenge that helps swimmers learn how to control their position, how to control their posture, and how to float more effectively. And if they can master those skills, it's going to be a lot easier to manage and alter their position when they're actually moving forward through the water swimming breaststroke. It's a great starting point for individuals at any age. And when they can execute this skill well, it's going to be a lot easier to manage their alignment and manage their position. It's an extremely simple exercise. They're just going to get into a ball, and then they're going to expand out of that ball, and they're trying to maintain their position as effectively as they can on the surface of the water. You can have them move their arms. It doesn't have to be an X. You can go into an I or any other shape you want. The key idea is they have to learn how to lean into the water, create pressure with their lungs, and then create tension in the legs to hold the legs up at the surface. The better they can do this in a static position like this, the easier it's going to be when they're moving forward through the water. Next strategy is what I call the alignment progression. The goal here as we move through the different tasks is to minimize the increase in resistance and to maintain as great alignment as possible. So swimmers are going to start on the surface of the water, just dolphin kicking without breathing. Obviously in that position, they're not going to be creating a lot of resistance. Then they're going to add the pull, so no air breaststroke with fins, and they're going to try to maintain as much of that alignment as they can, still trying to create as little resistance as they can. Then they're going to go up-down breaststroke with fins while they breathe every other stroke. Again, how much resistance can they eliminate? How aligned can they stay throughout the entire 25 or whatever distance you're doing? Then they're going to go breaststroke with fins. So now they add a breath every stroke. Again, can they find a way to maintain great alignment, keep everything in line as much as possible? How close can they get to what they were feeling during the dolphin kick with fins on the surface? Last one, they take the fins off, go regular breaststroke. And again, now they're adding the kick in. Can they still create as much alignment as possible and minimize the increase in resistance even though they're adding the legs? So for swimmers that aren't aware of what they're doing, so we're giving them a great sensory target with that first rep, and then they're trying to maintain that as they add different components of the breaststroke. So it's a real sensory challenge. The goal here is to start with perfect, great alignment when they're doing dolphin kicking. There shouldn't be much resistance that they're creating, and they're trying to minimize increases as they move through that. Really simple in concept, but really effective because it allows them to actually feel these skills and practice executing these skills. So we start here with dolphin kick on the surface, and you can see he's just moving through. There's not going to be a lot of resistance as he goes through. Then he's going to add the pull and still trying to stay as level as possible, trying to keep everything forward without disrupting his alignment. Next, he's going to breathe every other stroke. Again, trying to keep everything moving forward, trying to keep as little resistance as possible to maintain as great alignment as possible to keep things as easy as possible. Last one is now going breaststroke with fins, so regular breathing, still trying to keep everything as aligned as possible, keeping resistance as low as possible. And after that, you're just doing regular breaststroke, trying to keep that same great alignment, even though you're now adding the kick in, which is going to create more resistance. The goal is to minimize the amount of resistance that gets added. Because the head has such a strong influence on the hip position, we're going to alter the head position to alter the hip position. And so when we do that, swimmers can start to feel what's happening with the hips and how the head position influences that. Over time, they can start to figure out how do you keep their hips up and how do they keep the hips forward. So that way they create as little resistance as possible to create as much speed as possible. So there's a lot of different options here. You can have swimmers go with their head down. You can have them go with their alternating the head down. So one stroke head down, one stroke regular. You can have them go head up. You can have them go alternating head up, where they go one stroke with their head up and then one stroke normal. You can even have them alternate between no breath and then head up and go back and forth between that. There's a ton of different ways to do this, and they're all effective at helping swimmers learn and figure out and perceive what's happening with the hips when they take that breath and how they can change that and influence that by changing how they breathe. So this is head up breaststroke here, and as you see, his hips are going to be low, and that's exactly what we're looking for, so he can feel and he can understand what happens to the hips when the head's held in an unnaturally high position, or even when the head comes up in an unnaturally high position, even temporarily during that breath. Here we've got no breath breaststroke, and so here he's going to be minimizing the amount that his head comes up, and he's going to keep everything moving forwards, and that's going to have more of a forward effect on the hips. It's not going to push them down quite as much, and swimmers can feel that, become more aware of what happens when the breath is kept really low and how that impacts the hips. With this drill, he's going to breathe every other stroke, and so the impact of the breath becomes more obvious because he's feeling on alternating stroke cycles what happens when the head's higher, what happens when the head's lower, and he can try to minimize the difference between the two to still get a great breath while keeping the hips up and in alignment with each stroke cycle. While breaststroke with flutter kick can be used for a lot of different ways, for a lot of different reasons, here we're going to use breaststroke with flutter kick to improve alignment. So when adding a flutter kick, we're going to flatten out the stroke. There's not going to be as much up and down motion, and that means the hips are going to be up higher in the water. They're going to stay there, and they're going to be more stable. So those are all things that we're looking for, especially when swimmers are having trouble with alignment. There's too much up and down motion. So we're going to flatten out the stroke, keep the hips up, and then keep the hips stable in that position that we're looking for, that position of lower resistance with better alignment. And so when swimmers can start to feel a supported hip position, they can start to create it, they can start to influence it, they can start to change it. They can start to feel what it's like to just kind of slide through the water with everything riding right at the surface, and they can figure out how to make that happen. Once they can feel it by using the flutter kick, they can start to try to recreate that when they add a breaststroke kick back in. So here we've got breaststroke and flutter kick, and relative to regular breaststroke, his hips are going to stay up, they're going to stay stable, they're going to stay in the same basic position as he moves through the water, which is what we're really looking for, which is what we're really trying to accomplish. So the more he can do that, the more effective he's going to be at creating great alignment and maintaining that alignment, and then he just has to try to make it happen during regular breaststroke. Next up is training aids. The goal here is to use training aids to help create more awareness of alignment and how much resistance is being created with any activity. As we mentioned before, alignment is definitely a feel skill. Swimmers have to be able to feel the resistance they're creating over their body in order to change that, in order to influence it. They don't realize how their position or their posture is influencing how much resistance they create. They're not going to be able to change it. They're not going to be able to feel it. And there are 3 different ways I like to use training aids to help facilitate this outcome. First is overspeed. So if they're going faster, that means they're going to create more drag, which means they can feel the resistance. Great way to do that is fins. You can get a lot of repetitions in, and especially with breaststroke, you can go way faster than they normally would. That allows them to feel the resistance, and then they can start to eliminate it. Clothing is also really effective as well. It exaggerates the resistance because of either a t-shirt or shorts or whatever, and they can feel that as they move through the water. Even better, when they take the clothing off, now they're going to feel the water flowing over their shoulders, flowing over their hips, flowing over their skin, and they're going to be able to really feel what's happening, and they're going to be really able to feel that extra pressure because they're not as aligned as they normally are. Finally, we can add a weight belt as well. So that's going to exaggerate the sinking of the hips. It's also going to help them feel the hips more. And the more they can feel the movement of the hips, the more they can feel the movement of the torso, the better they're going to be able to control that because they're going to have more awareness. And it's going to kind of develop the strength to do that. And it's going to be much easier to make it happen without the weight belt when the weight belt comes off by getting practice and learning how to do it with the weight belt. So these training aids, if swimmers are struggling to feel what they're doing, this can be a really powerful strategy. Now, regardless of what strategy you use, you want to use performance challenges to force them to swim differently. So you can use speed, you can use stroke count, you can use stroke rate, you can use combinations of those, and that's going to challenge them to perform in different ways and try to achieve different performances. So if you have them go faster, it's going to change things. If you have them execute really great alignment at really slow speeds, it's going to change things. Same thing with high stroke counts versus low stroke counts, high stroke rates versus low stroke rates. We saw the differences between those 100 and 200 meter swimmers, and both skills are important to learn, but swimmers have to learn how to manage it in different ways. And by exposing them to all those different things, and then also challenging them to do things more effectively, whether in either breaststroke itself or with any of those drill strategies we talked about, this can really push them to learn. And so you want challenge, and you want challenge in different ways. Novelty, variety, they build skill. And it doesn't have to be a maximal performance challenge. Just asking swimmers to take one less stroke per 25, something like that, can be a really powerful tool. It doesn't have to be take as few strokes as possible each one. Same thing with descending. Just descending 1 to 4 can make a big difference in terms of what swimmers are feeling and experiencing, but it doesn't have to be descend 1 to 4 to all out. Just asking them to change their speed, their stroke count, their stroke rate, or some combination of those can make a big difference in terms of what they learn, what they experience, and as a benefit, it usually leads to better training as well. First set here is more skill-based, and so we're going to go 4 rounds through this. This is a variation of the alignment progression. So they're going to go dolphin kick with fins on the surface, no air breaststroke, up down breaststroke, breaststroke, and then regular breaststroke without the fins. They're going to go 3 times ball float to X float before each repetition. That way they can really feel their alignment. They can feel the control of their body and how to manage their position on the surface. The odd rounds, they're going to go flutter kick, so it's going to be more stable. The even route is going to be a little bit more up and down motion. And by using both of those, we can help them become more aware of their alignment and how they're moving through the water. Goal here is to increase the effort each round. It doesn't necessarily have to be super fast, but you're just trying to help them learn how to execute these skills with more and more intensity. So we're changing the head position, we're changing the kick, we're taking fins off, and we're helping them feel how to move through the water with better alignment and how to manage that in different situations. This set is a little bit longer. We're going to go 4 rounds through. They're going to go 4 75s and then a 75. The 4 75s are 25 breathe every other stroke, 25 alternating head up. So 1 stroke regular, 1 stroke head up, and then 25 normal breathing. The odds will use a flutter kick. The evens will use a breaststroke kick. And number 2 and number 4 are faster. So the breaststroke ones are faster than the flutter kick ones. The goal here is to work on multiple different breathing patterns to hold everything together, to manage alignment no matter what. So they're going to get a feel for those up and down positions on the first 2 25s and then try to put it together on the third 25. The flutter kick is going to flatten them out a little bit, and then breaststroke kick, they got to make that happen and maintain the same position. After those 4 75s, they get a chance to put it together with the 75 breaststroke. They'll take 1 less stroke per 25 with that, trying to maintain their alignment as they go through it. So we're alternating flutter and breaststroke kick. We're using different breathing patterns to really challenge their position and manage the hips. And they're using that with different kicks. And then on the final 75, they're trying to be more efficient as they go after they've already done those 4 75s. So we're challenging them with different ways. We're challenging them with different skills to help everything hold together in order to be more effective with maintaining their alignment. Last set is more of a speed set. So they're going to alternate between different breathing patterns. They're going to alternate between flutter kick and regular breaststroke. They're going to go strong efforts on the flutter kick ones. They're going to build the fast on the regular ones. Start with head up, then head down, alternating head up, alternating head down, and then they'll put it together with a 25 fast at the end. Now, there's another twist to this in that in round 1, those first 8 reps are with a t-shirt. Round 2, the first 8 reps are with shorts. And then round 3, there's no equipment that they need to use. So we're challenging them with different head positions, different kicks, different speed requirements, and we're using different resistance, either the t-shirt or the shorts, to help them become more aware of what they're doing and more aware of how they're moving through the water. The more awareness they have, the more effective they're going to be at creating change. And again, this is all done at pretty high speeds. They're really trying to go here. And so they're learning how to execute these skills and feel these skills at high speeds, make it happen then, and that's going to make it a lot more likely that these skills actually show up when they're going fast in competition, which is what it's all about. Swimming fast breaststroke is all about keeping resistance as low as possible. But unfortunately, there are a lot of times in breaststroke where swimmers have to create a lot of resistance either to breathe or to recover the arms or recover the legs. So the key to keeping resistance low is to execute these skills well, and more importantly, execute them really fast. Getting back in line is an absolutely critical skill in breaststroke. Not only does it have to be done well, it has to be done fast. And a lot of swimmers struggle with both aspects. And the faster they want to go, the more keeping resistance low is important, yet the more difficult it is to actually get back into line when the stroke rate is so high. As a result, a lot of swimmers will try to get their tempo up higher and higher and higher, and that makes it harder and harder and harder to get back into line. They end up using a lot more energy and not really swimming a whole lot faster. Let's take a look at how to help swimmers get back in line fast so that they can swim fast. Why does getting back into alignment matter? Well, when swimmers breathe, when they're recovering the arms, it's pretty much, in terms of speed, the position of death. The head is up, the hips are down, the arms are plowing forwards, and that's going to create a ton of resistance. And it's also going to create no propulsion because the arms obviously aren't creating any, and the legs can't be creating any either because the swimmers aren't going to kick until they get back forward after the recovery. And so swimmers are creating a ton of resistance. They're creating zero propulsion, and this movement often happens slowly. So not only are swimmers creating a lot of resistance, creating no propulsion, which means they're going to slow down and sometimes almost or even come to a stop. The longer it takes, which in a lot of swimmers it does take a long time, the more speed they're going to lose and the slower they're going to go. And so this is a position that swimmers do not want to be in, yet way too many swimmers spend much too much time here, and they make the position worse than it needs to be. And so the faster swimmers can get back into alignment, the faster they can get out of that position, the better they're going to be able to create speed because they're going to keep resistance low and they're going to be able to create more propulsion sooner. So how do swimmers actually get back in line and get back in line fast? There are two key aspects of it. One is recovering the breath, and two is recovering the arms. And so during the breath, the actual breath itself needs to be forward rather than just up. So that's going to set the stage for getting back into line fast. And the breath recovery itself needs to be really aggressive. It needs to be really forward, and it also needs to be moving down. So if swimmers are being really aggressive with recovering the upper body, recovering the head forward and down, they're going to be a lot more effective in getting back into alignment fast. They don't want to be patient with it. They want to be aggressive, and the more aggressive they are, the faster it'll happen. And the same thing happens with the arms. They need to be driven forward fast, they need to be driven forward aggressively, and they need to be driven forward directly. That gets the swimmer back level down with the water faster, and it gets them in position where they can create propulsion with the arms faster. If swimmers are passive with the arms, if they're moving them up, if they're shooting them down, it's not a direct line, the hand speed's not there, and so that means it's going to take longer before they get back into position. And it's all about speed and momentum. And so if you can imagine that the body's kind of like a seesaw, when the head comes up, the hips are going to drop down a little bit, but if the head and the chest can get thrown forward fast, then that's going to drive the hips back up, just like a seesaw. Press down on one side really aggressively, the other side's going to pop back up. And so the impact on that seesaw is going to be much more significant if the breath and the arms are working together and they get back forward, they get back in line fast together. It's like pressing harder on that seesaw because everything's getting pressed at the same time, and that's going to get the hips up in line even faster. And so it's not just doing these actions well, it's doing these actions well at the same time. So if we watch this swimmer here, he's just finished his pull, and you can see how aggressive he is with the arms and the head. He slams them forward, he slams them down, and if you watch the hips, what's going to happen here, the hips are maybe down a little bit, and then all of a sudden, they pop right back up as a result of throwing the head, the chest, and the arms forward. And so again, being really aggressive and then driving everything forward and down is going to help the swimmer get forward. That's going to pop the hips up, and the swimmer's going to get back into line really fast. In this particular swimmer, this is over 100 meters, and it's at world record speed, and you can see how fast that happens, and as a result, he gets back into line every single stroke, but he's using a really high stroke rate. He's not being patient with it. He's being really aggressive, and yet he's still able to get back in line, and that's because he does a great job of being aggressive with the recovery of the arms and the breathing each and every stroke cycle. We can see the same thing with these athletes with their recoveries over the water. You can see how aggressive they are in driving everything forwards, and you can see the hips pop up with that little splash right in the back of the stroke. And it's the same thing as that previous swimmer. They're being really aggressive with the arm recoveries, really aggressive with the breath recovery, and that's going to help them get in line fast, let the hips pop up. And this is over a 50-meter race, and so they're still going to get in line each and every stroke, and they're going to make that happen by being really aggressive with their recoveries of the breath and the arms. So what's the challenge with improving this skill? The biggest issue is that swimmers don't understand what fast means. They really lack aggression, and they already think they're going fast, so they don't see much reason to go any faster. They already think they're doing the skill, and so when you tell them to go fast, they may make a tiny adjustment, and it's going to feel like a big adjustment, but it's not nearly what it needs to be in order to be successful. And so in that regard, words don't necessarily change their perspective of what they have to do or what they're trying to accomplish, and instead, we have to try to force a change. They have to be able to feel what fast recoveries are, what aggressive recoveries really are. And if not, the same is going to be the same. If we just ask them to do something different, it's going to be really hard for them to break out of what they're doing. We've got to give them different strategies where they can feel it and they can be challenged by it and they can almost be forced to do it well. And that's when they can start to feel what they need to do. And once they can feel it, then they can fix it. The other challenge is that it's a timing issue as well. And so it's not just that the arms have to be fast. It's not just that the breath recovery has to be fast. They both have to happen at more or less the same time. So we get that seesaw effect that pops the hips up, allows everything to get back in line, and it allows it to happen really, really fast. Especially when they're going over 100 meters or 50 meters, they do not have time to wait for the hips to come back up. They've got to get into the next stroke cycle, and so they've got to be aggressive with the breath, aggressive with the recovery of the arms, and that's going to pop the hips up every time. And so we have to help them learn how to get those skills to all happen at the same time so that they can magnify the impact of each one of those skills so that the hips can come up and swimmers can get back into line fast. In terms of solutions, we have to solve the challenges that we just described. We have to help swimmers feel these skills. We're going to have to force them in some way to get out of the habits that they've already established, to get out of their comfort zone. We're going to have to get them to push what they're doing to the next level, and it's not going to happen just by instructing them. We're going to have to give them tasks that really force them to do things differently, that force them to change what they're doing, and also to feel different ways of moving through the water. Because again, if they can feel it, they can fix it. And if they can fix it, then we're on track. So we have to find strategies that push swimmers to do things differently and to do things better. First strategy is to change the breathing. So as we just discussed, the breath is going to have a big impact on how swimmers get back in a line fast. And so in order to get them to understand the impact of the breath recovery, we're going to change the breath. It's very difficult to know exactly how high they should breathe, exactly how they should return from the breath, and exactly what timing for them to use. But by giving them a range of different options, we can help them figure that out. And so we can have them go head up. We can have them go head down. That could be no breath, or it could be with a snorkel. We can have them alternate between head up and head down. We can have them alternate within the same 25, the same lap, one stroke head up, one stroke head down, or one stroke head up, one stroke regular, one stroke head down, one stroke regular. However you want to present it to them, the more variation, the better. We're just helping them understand the impact of the breath in as many different ways as possible. It's also going to help them appreciate the impact of the recovery of the breath, both in terms of the movement itself, as well as how they execute the skill in terms of the intensity. They're going to better understand how that skill influences their alignment. And by giving them lots of different options, by challenging them to be successful in lots of different ways, we're going to help them understand that. So we'll take a look at some of these options. So this here, he's got his head up. He's keeping the head up all the way through. So that's going to drive the hips down. And then when he goes back to regular breaststroke, he's going to be able to better feel the impact of recovering the head when he swims and he breathes in a normal way. Here we got no breath breaststroke. It can also be done with a snorkel. So again, we're taking the breath out, and by having that sensation, having that awareness, and asking them to perform with that different strategy, that's going to help them have more aware of the breath as well, but in a very different way. We're taking it away rather than exaggerating it and keeping the head up the entire time. Here, we're going to go breathing every other stroke. And so again, now they're comparing the regular breath and the lack of breath each and every cycle. And so that's going to help them create more awareness and give them a better feel of what they're doing as well. And you can use this same strategy alternating between a head up and a regular stroke, or even a head up and a head down stroke. Again, variation is key to help them understand the impact of the breath. Another strategy is to change the kick. And so the breaststroke kick can be relatively slow, and that's going to slow down the overall rate of the stroke. If we remove the kick, we either have them use dolphin kick or flutter kick. That's going to allow them to practice at higher stroke rates of the arms, and that allows them to get used to recovering the arms faster. And so we can create an overspeed effect with the arm recoveries, whatever rate they're used to racing at. If they practice at higher rates than that with more consistency, that rate is going to feel a little bit more comfortable. They're going to be used to recovering the arms faster, and that's going to make it easier to execute higher speed recoveries during their actual swimming. It can also add variation. And so the recoveries, they're going to feel slightly different with different kicks, and that's going to create greater awareness of the available strategies in terms of recovering the arms and recovering the arms faster. Dolphin kicking is going to add a little bit more of an undulation to the stroke. Flutter kicking is really going to flatten it out. It's going to force them to be aggressive and forward, and that can help them feel the different options in terms of recovering fast and being aggressive with getting back into line. Pretty straightforward here, breaststroke with flutter kick. And so again, it's the same thing as regular breaststroke. He's just going to have a flutter kick behind him, and that's going to encourage him to be a little bit more aggressive with the arm recoveries. He's going to be able to rate up even higher. And again, that's going to help them understand, how do I get through this cycle? How do I get through this aspect of the stroke faster and faster? Dolphin kick here, helping them, again, changing the kick, allowing them to be a little bit more aggressive with recovering the arms, recovering the body forward. Again, this is going to help them feel a little bit more of an undulation to it as well. But regardless, it's helping them feel, how can I be more arm driven? How can I get through the recovery, through the breath? How can I get back into alignment faster? And again, if they can feel in this context, they can start to apply that and make it happen during regular breaststroke. If we want them to recover the arms fast, a simple way to get them to do that and the simple way to help them become more aggressive is to actually resist the recoveries themselves. And so this is where you can put drag socks on the arms. If you don't have access to drag socks, you can just get some old t-shirts and tie them in a knot, and you can have it at the wrist or the elbow or the forearm, wherever you'd like. And with the drag socks themselves, you can have them wear the resistance at different points on the arm. And you can also bunch up the resistance and then place that at different points on the arm as well. And so it'll have a little bit different feel in different positions, but both can be really effective at, again, creating resistance on the arms. And so swimmers are going to have to recover with a lot of aggression, or they're going to get stuck as they move through the recovery. So it forces them to be aggressive. And again, it's forcing them to do something differently. And if they can take the same aggression that they learned to use with the resistance and apply that without the resistance, they're going to be a lot faster with getting through the breath, getting through the recovery, and getting back into alignment faster. So this is one example. This is where he's wearing the drag socks on his wrists. And so again, he's going to have resistance as he goes through the recovery, and he's going to have to recover aggressively, or he's not going to be able to get through that recovery fast and make the timing of breaststroke work. So we're putting more resistance on the recovery itself. That's challenging the swimmer to execute the skill at a higher and higher level. And then when they take the drag socks off, that's going to allow them to be able to move those arms fast, get into line fast. And again, you can be creative in terms of where you place the resistance and how you place the resistance on the arm to challenge swimmers in different ways, and also just to keep the variation high so that they're feeling slightly different things and they're challenged to execute in slightly different ways. Another strategy for some more advanced swimmers is to actually resist the breath. So you can tie a light parachute to the head, and that's going to require swimmers to be really aggressive when recovering the head during the breath. And a lot of swimmers are really passive there, and if they're passive with this activity, they're going to get punished because it's going to be very difficult to get back in a position, and it's going to take forever. And so what's good about this strategy is that swimmers get constant feedback, constant reminders about their breathing, and they're encouraged to breathe well and to breathe fast. Rather than asking swimmers to pay attention and just say, think about your breathing, we're commanding their attention by requiring them to do it and providing them really clear feedback each and every time about whether they were successful or they need to continue to step up their skills and execute at a higher level. So here we can see it in action. And again, he's got to be aggressive with the head recovery, aggressive with the breath recovery, or he's really going to struggle to get back into alignment. And so this is a great way to help swimmers that are getting stuck, that are breathing too high, that are breathing too slow, to give them the feedback they need to make that change. And again, keep the resistance really light. You don't want to cause any problems, and you don't want to disrupt the stroke too much. You just want to give them a little bit more feedback about what they're doing and how they're doing it. So with the resistance of the breath, changing the breath, changing the kick, we've got a lot of different options, and I would encourage you to combine them in lots of different ways. And so there's no perfect breathing. Each swimmer is going to be a little bit different. It's hard to predict exactly how a swimmer should breathe, but they do have to find a breathing pattern and a breathing skill and a breathing style that works for them. And so we need to provide them opportunities to make it happen, to learn how to find what they need to do. And the more variation, the more variety, the more variability we can provide, the more likely it is they're going to find a solution that works for them. And again, variation, exploration, those are key aspects of the discovery process. Use as many options as possible, use as many combinations as possible. So you've got the breathing, you've got the kick, you've got the resistance option, and you can pair them in lots of different ways to really encourage swimmers to change how they're swimming. And the more different ways they're exposed to, the more likely it is they're going to find one that's going to work for them. And with all the previous strategies, you got to challenge performance. And that's with stroke rate, and that's with speed. And so by using a tempo trainer, you can have them go at certain stroke rates that are a little bit out of their comfort zone and force them to execute, force them to perform. And then you can start pushing the rate, going higher and higher and higher, provided that they can still hold things together. And once they start getting used to using higher stroke rates, then it's time to add the speed component. We don't just want them spinning their arms. We want them to recover fast and be aggressive with it, but it has to be done well. And so you want to make sure that they can create speed at whatever stroke rates you're using. So you can have them descend at a certain stroke rate. You can have them just try to go as fast as possible at a certain stroke rate. And you can do that with all the different strategies, all the different activities that we talked about. In each case, that's going to put more pressure on them to recover fast, to recover aggressively, and to get back in line more aggressively and more effectively. So by challenging performance, we're giving them concrete goals to shoot for, and they have to execute those and perform in a lot of different situations depending on the different tools that we're using and challenging them with. So with this set, we're challenging them in terms of the breathing, and we're also changing the kick. And so we're going to have them go with a snorkel, so the head down, then we're going to go with the head up, then we're going to go breathe every other stroke, then we're going to go head up every other stroke. And those first four on the odd rounds, they're flutter kicks, so swimmers are going to feel a little bit more rate, they're going to be a little bit flatter, and then on the even rounds, they're going to be a little bit more up and down motion, but still they should be able to get the stroke rate up and be more aggressive as they go through. The first and the fourth round, they're going to build the strong. The second and the fifth, they're going to add fins and build the strong, so they should be going a little bit faster. They got a little bit more speed there. And then on rounds 3 and 6, it's just solid effort throughout. So we're challenging them with different kicking styles. We're challenging them with different breathing styles. We're not putting a whole lot of pressure on performance, but we're getting them to explore. We're getting them to change, and that's going to help them figure out different ways to recover more aggressively, to get back into line faster, and to get back into line more effectively. Next set, we're going to add some intensity to it. So they're going to go 425s breaststroke with drag socks on the wrist. They need to build a fast on those. Odds are flutter kick, evens are breaststroke kick. There, they're going to have to recover aggressively because of the drag socks. And then within each 25, they're going to have to recover even more and more aggressively if they want to build their speed. We're changing up the kick so that they can get a little bit more rate on the odds and then try to make that happen on the evens. Then we're going 450s breaststroke with flutter kick, descend 1 to 4 at 200 stroke rate. So we're having them use the flutter kick so it's a little bit easier to hit that rate. And then they're descending 1 to 4, so they got to find more speed while keeping the rate up. So they got to get better with their skills, but they have to be consistent with the rate. Then we'll go 50 breaststroke strong, see if they can put it together. The next set's done the same way, except it's dolphin kick instead of flutter kick. So a little bit more undulation, but they still need to be really good with the rate. And then the last set is going to be done all breaststroke kick on all the 25s and the 50s, and they're going to finish off with the best 50 breaststroke of the day. So here we're putting resistance on the recoveries, we're changing up the kick, and we're asking them to create speed at higher stroke rates. So challenging the ability to get back into line in a lot of different ways. Last set, we're going to push the speed a little bit more. So they're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 225s breaststroke with a parachute on the head. We're challenging the breathing here. Number 1 flutter, number 2 breaststroke. And then they're going to go for both of those 12.5 head up, 12.5 swim, and they're going to go build a fast. Then they're going to go 225s breaststroke, number 1 flutter kick, number 2 breaststroke kick. Again, 12.5 head up plus 12.5 swim, but now it's fast at 100 stroke rate. So they're going to have their stroke rate up. It's not going to be a maximal rate. It's going to be a fast rate. And they've got to hold things together. They've got to keep everything moving. They got to make that transition from the head up to the regular swim. They're flutter kick on number 1, breaststroke kick on number 2, and they're just going to let it rip. And they're going to see if they can get back in a line fast. They can be really aggressive with that. They can be really good with that. So here we're challenging speed, and now we want to see if swimmers can execute these skills really, really well at high stroke rates, which is ultimately what they're going to have to do in races. Breaststroke is a difficult stroke to help swimmers go fast in. Everything has to be happening at the right time and in the right way, or the whole stroke falls apart. One of those key elements is breathing. If swimmers aren't breathing in the right way, at the right time, at the right speed, it's going to be really difficult for them to go fast. And unfortunately, just telling them to breathe faster or lower doesn't actually work very well. So in this video, I'm going to show you strategies that you can use to help your swimmers improve their breaststroke breathing. From why it matters, to what swimmers have to do, to what it looks like, to what you can do to help your swimmers improve their breaststroke, as well as a couple sets that show you these ideas in action. With that, let's dive in. So why does breathing matter in breaststroke? We've got 3 big reasons. First of all is resistance. So the breath is going to move swimmers out of alignment. When they go up with the upper body, the lower body can tend to sink, and that's going to mean more resistance. And the more they move out of alignment, the more resistance is going to create it. And that's just like putting on the brakes. And so if swimmers are coming up really high and their hips are dropping really low, that means they're going to create a ton of resistance, and that means they're going to lose a lot of speed. The second is tempo. So faster stroke rates can allow swimmers to go faster, and if their breath is taking more time than it should because they're moving more than they should, or they're getting stuck in a certain position, that means their stroke rate is going to be lower. So the more time they take, the slower the stroke rate. And when swimmers are trying to go fast, that can create a lot of problems because it becomes really difficult to swim at higher stroke rates when the breath is holding them up. And what some swimmers will do is they know they instinctively have to keep the stroke rate up, so they shortchange other important aspects of the stroke cycle to make up for the excessive length of the breath. So not only are they sometimes slowing their stroke rate down, they're actually compromising more effective and more important aspects of the stroke cycle in order to try to keep the stroke rate up. Lastly, it can affect timing. And so breaststroke is all about timing and rhythm. But if there's one part of the stroke that's taking more time than it should, or putting swimmers in positions where they're unable to swim with great timing or rhythm, that's going to really mess things up. And when their timing is off, their rhythm is off, they're going to swim slower, and it's going to be a lot more difficult, and that means they're going to get tired faster, which means they swim even slower. So for all these reasons, improving the breath is really critical in breaststroke, and for some, it can be the key to unlocking more speed. So what is effective breaststroke breathing? There's two aspects of it. One is the breath itself, so coming up out of alignment, and that's what we're going to talk about here. And the second one, which we'll talk about next, is coming back down after the breath, getting back into alignment. So the goal with the breath itself is to breathe without disrupting the alignment of the hips. So if swimmers are moving through the water, if they can breathe in a way that gets the upper body up without letting the hips drop, that's going to be effective. So if they can breathe like that, that's good. If they're breathing like that, that's not so good. So they have to try to find a way to get a breath without disrupting alignment of the hips. And one way to do that is to really focus on breathing with the body. So during the pull, the upper body is necessarily going to come up. And so swimmers want to time that breath. So the head's going to be in position to get a great breath as the body rises. If they try to do that earlier or later, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get the breath and to get an effective breath without disrupting the alignment of the hips. A second key skill is focusing on breathing forward. And doing so makes it a lot easier to maintain alignment while getting that breath. So if swimmers think about coming up, that's more likely to drop the hips down. If they think about coming forwards, they're a lot more likely to keep everything in line, maintain their alignment, and get a breath that moves them down the pool. The last piece is trying to optimize breath height. And so they're trying to maximize the pull while minimizing the hip drop. And so if the hips are dropping a ton, they're probably going to want to breathe less. So if their hips are dropping, they probably want to breathe lower. On the other hand, staying really low can compromise the effectiveness of the pull because rising up allows swimmers to create a lot of propulsion with the upper body. It allows them to get more leverage on the water. And so if they're swimming super flat, it's going to be tough to do that. So they want to come up enough that they can get more out of the pull, but not too much so that the hips drop. And so that's the challenge here, is finding the sweet spot. Now, after swimmers breathe, they got to get back into position. So how they do that has a big influence on the effectiveness of the breath and how fast they're ultimately going to be able to swim. So the goal is to get out of negative positions, positions that are causing them to slow down, as fast as possible. So what is that like? So when their head's up, there's more pressure on the hips to go down, and they're kind of bulldozing through the water. So they need to get out of that position as fast as they can, and they want to get back into a horizontal position. So the way to think about doing that is kind of like a seesaw. So when they're level in the water, when the head comes up, the hips tend to go down. And so they want to press on the fingertip side of the seesaw to get everything back in line. So if they think about driving everything forward and down, that's more likely to work that seesaw, press down the front end, and get the back end back up into alignment. So the breath shouldn't just be a lowering of the head. It should be an aggressive recovery, both forwards and down, so that they can get everything back in line. So swimmers can also pair the recovery of the breath with the recovery of the arms. The more violent that is, the more aggressive that is, the easier it's going to be to get the hips back up in line. If everything comes down nice and patiently, you're probably not going to get as much pressure. If things come back fast and really pop the hips up to the surface, they're going to be able to get back in line more effectively, and they're going to be able to get back in line faster. So the more aggressive they can be with the head recovery, the almost violent they can be with the head recovery and the arm recovery, the faster they're going to be able to pop everything back into place. And that becomes extremely important when trying to swim fast over short distances, where swimmers do have to get back into alignment, but they have to do so without sacrificing the stroke rate. So let's check out what that looks like. So we'll take a look at it underwater so you can see an impact of the breath and the recovery on the position of the hips. So this swimmer, if you watch his hips here, they don't drop when he takes that breath. They just move forward in the water, which is what we're looking for. The other aspect you can see is he's breathing as the upper body rises. And after he takes that breath, you're going to see the hands move forward fast. So right there, you can see how aggressive they were in those two frames. And then he's going to drive the head and the chest back down. And let's watch what the hips do. They get back up into alignment, and they're right where they need to be. If we go back, you can see that the hips haven't dropped much, but they do drop a little bit. And then after that recovery, they pop right back up to the surface, and everything is back into alignment after that breath. And what's important is this was a 100-meter race in a major championships, and I believe it was a world record, and he's still getting back into alignment after that breath after each stroke. So even at really high stroke rates, it's critical to get back after the breath into alignment after every stroke. So we'll watch again here. So as the body starts to rise, that's where the breath comes. He does it without dropping the hips hardly at all, and then a really fast and aggressive recovery of the hands and the head, and he's back in line, and the hips pop up back to the surface. So he's breathing in a way that allows him to keep his hips up at the surface and get a great pull. And then after the breath, he's recovering fast and aggressively to get back into alignment as soon as he can without sacrificing the stroke rate. So we'll watch another swimmer here, same thing. So again, the head comes up as the body is rising. She takes her pull. Watch the hips there. They haven't really dropped much at all. And then aggressive recovery with the head and the hands. You can see how fast the hands move forwards right there. And you can see how fast right there she gets that head back down into the water. She's slamming it down. She's not being patient with it. She's getting really aggressive. And as a result, right there, the hips pop back up just a touch. If they've lost any height, they get back into position. So right there, and she's ready to go. And again, this is a major championship race, I believe over 100 meters. If it wasn't a world record, it was awfully close. And she's still getting back into alignment each stroke. So the way she's making that happen, like right here, she's breathing in a way that doesn't result in much loss of alignment. And then after the breath, she's getting back into a position by aggressively recovering and doing a great job of getting back into alignment as fast as she can by using the arms and the head to throw everything back into the water to get the hips back up to the surface. So if we watch the swimmers here, we can see the aggressiveness of the recovery, how they move everything forward fast, they move the head forward fast, and they really try to get back into alignment as quickly as they can. And when they breathe, you can see that the breath itself is even forwards. They're not just coming up, they're coming forwards with the breath, and they're recovering forwards, and they're getting everything back down in alignment really quickly. And you can see that even the hips pop up a little bit after that recovery on the left. And then on the right there, this is a 50-meter world championship race, and they're being really aggressive with getting back into alignment so that they can maintain their high stroke rate without sacrificing the alignment that they have and the amount of resistance they have as they move through the water. So they have to be really aggressive with breathing forward and then recovering that breath really fast and really aggressively to get everything back in line to maintain their speed. So we've talked about why the breath matters, and we've talked about what swimmers need to do in order to execute an effective breath. So what's the challenge? What makes it difficult to help swimmers learn to breathe effectively? First of all, it's going to be different for every swimmer. Their lower body is going to be shaped differently. It's going to have different lengths. It's going to have different weights. And their upper body is going to have different lengths. It's going to have different weights. It's going to have a different shape. So we talked about that teeter-totter earlier. It's going to work a little bit differently depending on the structure of the swimmer. Some swimmers may have to come up higher. Some swimmers may have to come up lower. And some swimmers may have to compensate more for coming up higher or lower. Everything's going to be a little bit different for each swimmer, even if they're trying to follow and achieve the same principles. So while it would be nice to have one breathing solution that applies to everyone, even though we have basic principles, we don't have a specific way that each breaststroker should swim. And if you're not convinced of that, just watch a major championship final in breaststroke, and you're going to see 8 totally different breaststrokes, and they're all going to be really effective at a world-class level. Another challenge with improving breathing, especially in breaststroke, is that everything affects everything in the stroke. Learning effective breathing can be tough with the rest of the stroke, because if one thing's off, like we talked about earlier, the whole stroke doesn't necessarily work, or it can just feel really terrible. So if swimmers are trying to figure out different ways of breathing, they may not be paying attention to the other important aspects of the stroke, and the whole thing can kind of fall apart, and it's difficult to learn in that context. So that's a challenge that's particularly specific to breaststroke, because in order to work on the stroke as a whole, everything has to be working well, and it's hard to make everything work well when you're focused on one particular aspect. Another challenge with breaststroke breathing is the precision involved. Swimmers have to find just the right height, they have to do it at just the right time, and they got to recover in just the right way. And as we mentioned, that precision is going to be a little bit different for each swimmer, and if it's off just a little bit, it can really affect the stroke. And I'm sure you've seen when breaststrokers kind of lose their stroke and they can't get it back, and the performance impact is obvious. Well, breathing can play a big role in that as well. Last challenge is, for all these reasons, you can't necessarily teach it. Because of the different shapes and sizes of swimmers, you don't know exactly how they should breathe, and you don't know exactly how they should return the breath. And because of the precision involved, it's tough to be able to see those slight differences and see those slight changes and see the impact of them. It's going to be difficult to tell a swimmer to breathe 1 inch lower or to angle their body at 5 degrees less or more That's not going to be something that swimmers can really understand. And further, it's not something that you're probably even going to be able to see. And I'll speak for myself, I can't see that type of stuff. So to overcome these challenges, we need solutions that make them irrelevant. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So to help swimmers improve their breaststroke breathing, we need to find solutions that allow them to find the optimal breath for them. They need to figure out the right time to breathe, and they need to figure out the right way to breathe. And because we can't necessarily know exactly what's going to be perfect for them, the way to address that problem is to do everything we can to put them in situations where they can start to feel and figure out what's going to be the best breath for them. So we're going to go over 2 exercise strategies that can help them do so. We're going to go over 2 training aid solutions that can be really helpful. And then we're going to go over some performance solutions to help put pressure on them to figure out the best ways for them to move through the water. So the most important solution, and my favorite one, is varying the breath. So because we can't know what perfect breathing is going to be for any swimmer, rather than trying to do it perfectly, we're going to try to do it in every way possible so that they get exposed to tons of different breathing patterns. Then they can learn all the different options, they can feel the impact of those different options, then they can select the best option, which allows them to move through the water with the least effort and the most speed. And importantly, it's not necessarily a conscious process, they're just going to naturally gravitate towards whatever is going to be the most effective. And part of that process is driven by performance goals, which is what we're going to talk about later. Again, they're not really thinking through, this is exactly how I should breathe. But by providing them with lots of input, lots of different information, they start to figure out what's going to be the most effective way to breathe that allows them to move through the water as fast as possible. So we have a few different ways that they can breathe. 1, they can not breathe, they keep their head down throughout the whole stroke cycle. 2, they can breathe normally. 3, they can breathe with their head up. So they're just swimming and they're not letting their head drop at all. They can also think about looking down when they breathe, and they can think about looking forward when they breathe. Those are the different ways that they can execute a breath. And then by varying those options and then combining those options in different ways, we have an unlimited number of variations and alternations that we can use. So for instance, they can alternate between head down and regular breathing or head down and head up breathing. They can switch that every stroke cycle. They can switch that lap by lap. They can use all sorts of different variations, and you're only limited by your creativity. The goal here is to help them explore all the different breathing patterns so they can start to figure out what's going to help them go fast. You can also change the kick, so you can use flutter kick, dolphin kick, or breaststroke kick. That will allow them to get a different feel for the breath, and like we talked about earlier, the timing issue can be a real challenge. So by using flutter and dolphin kick, we can kind of eliminate that timing challenge so they can just focus on the breath, they can just focus on moving forward, and they don't have to figure out how to make sure the kick is working with all of that. And again, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, the key aspect too is to make sure that they're asked to perform. So they're trying to go faster with head up breaststroke, for instance, or they're trying to go faster with head down breaststroke, for instance, or they're trying to go faster alternating between head down and head up. And they're going to try to find the best ways to do that and perform while using those different variations. And the more they learn to perform with these different breathing patterns, the more effective they're going to be with all breathing patterns. Just to show you what it looks like, here's breaststroke without breathing. So they're just focused on keeping the head as low as they can. Obviously it's going to rise up a little bit, and that's fine, but they're trying to minimize the amount of up and down motion, the amount that the head is coming up out of the water. Now, more or less the opposite of that is head up breaststroke. So they're swimming with their head up, and that's going to help them be more aware of what's happening with their hips, because as you can see here, his hips are going to ride pretty low no matter what he tries to do, and that can help him feel the impact of having the head up while he swims. This particular version can be really useful for helping swimmers learn to recover the hands quickly, because there tends to be an abbreviated pull, and they can literally see how fast they're moving their arms over the surface of the water. Last variation we'll take a look at is alternating between keeping the head down and breathing normally. The goal here is to feel the difference between the 2 breathing patterns, and by doing it every other stroke and then asking them to perform it that way, they're going to try to figure out exactly what they need to do to keep everything moving forward regardless of the breathing pattern. Next option is to resist the recoveries, specifically the arm recoveries. So poor arm recoveries slow the breath recovery. If the swimmers are getting stuck here, they can't get back with the heads because the hands are still in the way. So one way to draw attention to that is to resist the recoveries. So you can put drag socks on the elbow, you can put drag socks on the wrist, you can have it hanging over the elbow or hanging over the wrist, or you can bunch it up and just have it be like almost a wristband and then a elbow band there too. And what you're going to do is it requires them to recover with intent. They've got that extra resistance, and if they're not being really aggressive, they're just going to totally get stuck. And so to even make their stroke work at all, they have to be really aggressive with getting the arms recovered and getting the arms recovered fast. For swimmers that tend to put not much effort in the recovery, or they just don't really understand how important it is, this can help get their attention and force them to be more aggressive with the arm recoveries. So improving the arm recoveries is a really important aspect of the breath recovery because the arms need to get out of the way so the head and the body can come back down. Now, not everyone has drag socks, and so for plan B, what you can do is go head up breaststroke with dolphin kick or a flutter kick, and then have them go fast. So because the head's going to be up, they're going to have to really be super aggressive, and you can have them watch the arms and be really aggressive with those recoveries, and by having them do it with dolphin kick and flutter kick, it tends to speed up the stroke rate, and you can add fins if you wanted to, and that's going to really encourage them and force them to recover fast. Of course, you can do head up breaststroke with dolphin kick and flutter kick and use the drag socks to resist the recoveries, which can make it even more effective. The main idea is challenge them to recover the arms fast so that they can get back into alignment faster with the arms, which means they can get back into alignment faster with the head. And the faster everything moves forward, as we talked about, that's going to get that seesaw rolling, and that's going to get everything back into alignment fast. The faster that happens, the sooner they can take the next stroke without disrupting alignment, and the faster their stroke rate's going to be, the faster they're going to go. From more of a general strategy perspective, you can add resistance. So resistance is going to slow them down, and they're going to have to work harder to get back into alignment. Generally speaking, it's going to pull the hips down, and it's going to make it harder to get back into alignment and get the hips back up. So swimmers are going to have to work really hard, similar to what we did with the resisted arm recoveries. They're going to have to work really hard to get back into position with each stroke. And when we're using different breathing patterns, that's going to challenge them further. So they're going to have to figure out how to make that happen with the resistance and with different breathing patterns. So similarly, the resistance tends to pull the hips out of position, so they're going to have to work harder to stay in line. They're going to have to work harder to get back in line. So it takes the basic challenge present with using different breathing patterns, and then it magnifies it because of the added resistance. And so you can use a weight belt, which is definitely going to pull the hips down. You can use a parachute, which really tends to pull the hips down. And then you can use the cord and the pulleys, which, because the resistance tends to be on the pool deck, is not going to pull their hips down quite as much, but it is going to make it more difficult for them to manage their position, and it's going to do so in a slightly different way, which, as we talked about, variation can be really useful for that purpose. So varying the breathing and then also challenging the recoveries can be made even more effective by adding different types of resistance, making it more difficult to both stay in line and get back in line after every breath. And that extra challenge can help them learn how to be more effective with each breath. Another strategy you can use to challenge the same activities is training aids. And so two in particular that I think are really useful. One is hold tennis balls. And the reason you want to do that, you use a tennis ball, close their fist, you can't use the hand, and now they have to use the forearm. But more importantly, the hands are really used to kind of lift the body to breathe effectively. But if they don't have the hands, they're going to have to figure out how to use the torso, how to manipulate and control the torso without relying only on the hands to get the body into position. So they're going to have to really use their torso to get where they want to be and how they want to breathe. So that's an extra challenge regardless of the breathing pattern they're going to use. They're going to have to figure out how to breathe effectively without using the hands to move themselves in position. Then, of course, once they get the hands back, it's going to be even easier to do so. Second, you can have them use fins. And so when they're using fins, everything happens faster. They need to be more precise with the breathing. They need to be more aggressive with the breathing, because if they don't, they're going to miss that timing window because everything needs to happen faster. Secondly, because they're moving faster through the water, the consequences of poor breathing are going to be more obvious. If they're coming up high and they're getting stuck in that position, they're really going to feel it. And if they don't do a good job of coming back out of that breath, they're also going to feel it because they're going to feel all that resistance they're creating when they're not in alignment in the front of the stroke. So fins can be really useful for practicing these skills at faster speeds, where swimmers have to execute faster, and the consequences of not executing are going to be more obvious. All the solutions we've discussed so far become even more effective when we ask for performance. And so you always want to ask for performance regardless of what you're doing. And it could be stroke counts, it could be stroke rates, it can be speed, or some combination. And they don't have to necessarily ask for maximal effort or maximal output. You just want to have them have a goal of some sort to challenge them to perform at higher levels. And so there's two basic ways you can do that. You can have them use the sensory activities, the solutions we've talked about, and then perform. So for instance, they go 425s head up breaststroke plus flutter kick to help them feel that different breathing pattern. And then they go right into 425s breaststroke, minimize stroke count and time, where they're trying to perform. Or you can have them perform during those sensory activities as well. So 425s breaststroke, they're going to alternate head up and then no air by stroke. So they go one stroke head up, one stroke head down. And on those, they're going to minimize stroke count and time as well. Then they go right into 425s, minimize stroke count and time. So in the first case, we're helping them feel something different and then they perform. In the second case, we're having them perform while they use a different strategy and then perform while swimming regular breaststroke. By using the different performance strategies, we're not just suggesting that they pay attention or suggesting that they try to find new solutions, we're requiring them to. If they're trying to go faster, if they're trying to hit different stroke counts, if they're trying to hit different stroke rates, they're necessarily going to swim differently, and we want to use that to encourage them to explore how they're breathing and also find the ways that are most effective at producing performance. Regardless of what they're doing, they're going to get more out of it when there's performance expectations. All right, so what does this actually look like when it comes down to sets? This is more of a skill set. We're going to go 2 rounds through it. They're going to go 325s, 325s, and 225s, and then 325s, 325s, and 225s. They're going to go through that 2 total rounds. You can certainly do this with or without resistance or with different types of resistance. So they're going to go 325s breaststroke with a parachute. They're taking as few strokes as possible. No air, breathe every other stroke, and number 3 is regular. And then they're going to go 325s breaststroke with a parachute, build a strong, no air, breathe every other stroke, and regular. And then they're going to go 225s breaststroke. Number 1 is breathe every other stroke. Number 2 is regular. The second half is going to be the same as the first half. The only difference is the first half is focused more on the low aspect of the breath, so they're not breathing often. And then on the second half, we're focusing on having a really high breath with the head up position. So number 1 is head up, number 2 is head up every other stroke, number 3 is regular, and then the last 2 are head up every other stroke, and the last one is regular. So we've got stroke count expectations here, we've got speed expectations here, we're using resistance, and we're varying the breathing pattern in lots of different ways to help them explore how to go fast, how to figure it out, how to stay long, regardless of the breathing pattern. And the resistance, the parachute, adds an extra challenge and will give them more feedback about what they're doing and how they're swimming. So it's a great way to challenge swimmers to figure out how to breathe effectively by showing them and asking them to breathe in different ways, and then I'm asking them to perform regardless of the breathing pattern or how they're swimming. Next set has a little bit more of an endurance focus. They're going to go 4 rounds through. They're going to go a 75 with flutter kick, and then a 75 with dolphin kick, and then a 50 breaststroke to finish. So the 75s are always going to be 25 alternate head up and regular, 25 breathe every other stroke, so head down and regular, and then 25 breaststroke. And then the 50 is always the same stroke count each 50, and they're going to descend the whole thing 1 to 4 by round. So they're having to perform with different kicks, they're having to perform with different breathing patterns, and then they're going to put it all together with regular breaststroke. So the idea here is to figure out how to swim faster and faster, regardless of the breathing pattern and regardless of the kicking pattern. The more effective they can be in any of these variations, the more effective they're going to be in all these variations. The better they can get at swimming fast, regardless of the breathing pattern, the more likely it is they're going to be able to execute with the right breathing pattern when it really matters. And we're helping them build the endurance to execute well, regardless of the breathing pattern. Last set is more of a speed set. They're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 8 times 6 cycles fast breaststroke with a 100 stroke rate. So whatever their stroke rate is for 100, that's what they're going to use. They're going to go odds, dolphin kick, evens, or breaststroke kick. They're going to alternate with 2 with drag socks on the elbow and then 2 with drag socks on the wrist. And so the challenge there is they have to hit 100 stroke rate even though they have that extra resistance. So they're going to have to be really aggressive with the recoveries of both the arms and the breath. They're going to have to work to get back into alignment fast. Next, they're going to go 25 head up breaststroke with flutter kick, and that's fast. So they're going to have to be really aggressive with the arm recoveries. Then they're going into 25 breaststroke fast where they try to put everything together. So this aspect, we're really working on getting back into alignment fast, working on the recovery of the breath as opposed to the breath itself. And they have to be really good with recovering the arms fast, getting the head back down in alignment fast so that they can swim fast. So breaststroke breathing is a really critical skill. Unfortunately, it's not one where we can just tell swimmers exactly what to do. So we have to put them in situations. Where they can figure out the most effective breathing pattern for them. That's going to come from using different variations of breathing, using different variations of kicking, and then really challenging that with resistance, with fins, with tennis balls, and then asking them to perform. By using those solutions, you can help your swimmers breathe more effectively. Breaststroke timing can be one of the most difficult skills for swimmers to learn. And even when they learn it, it can come and go just like that, and often at the worst possible time. Fortunately, breaststroke timing is actually pretty simple, even if it's hard to do. And in this video, we're going to go over strategies to help your swimmers more consistently and reliably learn breaststroke timing and be able to execute it when it matters. We'll go over why it matters, what it is, what it looks like, why it's difficult to improve, and then how to actually make it happen. Let's check it out. So why does timing matter in breaststroke? The analogy I like to use is hitting the gas and the brakes at the same time. There's no speed. And so there's a lot of propulsion that's created with the arms and the legs in breaststroke but there's also a lot of resistance that's created with the arms and the legs in breaststroke. And if they happen at the same time, you're pushing both pedals in the car. While they might move forward, it's going to take a lot of energy and it's not going to be very fast. So we have to help swimmers make sure they're doing the right thing at the right time to maximize and optimize their speed. And timing also influences the effectiveness of the arms and the legs. So the kick and the pull can create more propulsion or less propulsion depending on when they happen within the stroke cycle. So if swimmers can get timing right, they're going to get more out of the same. If they get it wrong, they're going to get a lot less out of the same. That's also true of the arm recoveries and the leg recoveries. They happen slowly, they happen at the wrong time, they're going to create a lot more resistance than if they can happen at the right time. So we have to help swimmers figure out how to do the right things at the right time to get more speed out of the same effort, and that is exactly what we want. So what is effective breaststroke timing? As I mentioned earlier, it's actually pretty simple, if not easy to do. So swimmers need to learn how to separate the arms and the legs. The legs are going to kick when the arms are in streamline, and the arms are going to pull when the legs are in streamline. So that means they're hitting the gas without hitting the brake, and they're going to get a lot more propulsion out of the kick, out of the pull, and it's going to take a lot less energy, a lot less effort. And so when the arms and the legs are separated, swimmers can change their timing depending on how fast they want to go. They can get more separation when they want to go slower, and they need to shrink the separation when they want to go faster. So in a 200 breaststroke, there tends to be more time between the arms and the legs. And then in a 50 breaststroke, there tends to be little to no time between the arms and the leg. And that's a skill that swimmers need to manage in order to swim the right stroke at the right time for the right event. Regardless, fast recoveries are going to be critical for effective breaststroke. It allows swimmers to minimize the amount of time they spend in positions that create a lot of resistance. And it allows them to maintain high stroke rates, even though they have to wait and be patient and separate the arms and the legs. So if everything happens slow, it's going to be slow. But if they can recover fast, they'll get out of resisted positions faster, and they'll be able to keep the stroke rate and the kick rate up, which is also critical for going fast. So let's check out what it looks like in some elite swimmers. So first, we'll watch some 200 swimmers, as it's a little bit easier to see this timing. So we'll start here in a streamlined position, and the first thing he's going to do is he's going to pull and watch what happens with the legs. They don't move. He's not going to recover the legs until the arm pull is completely finished. So he's finished the arm pull here. He still hasn't started to recover the legs with any type of effort or intensity. And then he's going to recover the arms forward quickly, recover the legs quickly, and now once he starts to kick, he's already back into streamline with the upper body. So by having the arms in streamline when he kicks, he's going to get a lot more speed than if he was in a position that's creating a lot of resistance. And so he's going to kick there, and again, now he's going to separate the arms and the legs. He just kicked with the legs, now he's going to pull with the arms, and because he's swimming at 200, there's a lot of space between the arms and the legs, especially with this swimmer who's really good at maintaining alignment and has a strong kick. The principle is the same even with all athletes. However, how much separation can differ from swimmer to swimmer. Now again, arms are pulling, the legs are in streamline, so he's hitting the gas, he's not hitting the brakes with the legs. He gets through that, and then he's going to recover the arms fast, he's going to recover the legs fast, so that he's in a position, he's back in streamline, he can kick, and he's going to be able to get a lot more out of that kick, just like he got a lot more out of that pull. And so it's simple, it's effective, and it's all about arms and then legs with separation, with space between the arms and between the legs. So now let's take a look at what happens over shorter distances when swimmers are swimming hundreds. So now this is a race where a swimmer is breaking the world record in the 100, and we're going to watch and see if he has the same basic concepts, the same basic principles when he's swimming fast at really high stroke rates. So he's going to be pulling here, and then he's finished his pull. The legs have still not recovered, just like our other swimmer. And then quick recovery of the arms, quick recovery of the legs, and now he's in a position to kick back with the upper body in streamline. There it happens there, and then once he starts the pull, his legs are back in alignment, everything's tight, and that's going to allow him to create a powerful pull with as little resistance as possible, and then recover again. Legs come up fast, arms recover fast, he gets out of those positions quickly, and also allows him to get in position to execute a great kick while being in really great alignment. So what's really important there is the separation between the arms and the legs. And the difference between our previous swimmer and this swimmer is one is going to wait a lot longer between the pull and the kick and the kick and the pull. But this swimmer, because he has to swim faster, he has to have a higher stroke rate, he's going to wait a lot less. It's going to be arms and then legs, and it's going to happen really fast. There's not going to be a lot of separation, and that allows them to maintain really great timing while still swimming with a really high stroke rate. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to help swimmers learn how to separate the arms, how to separate the legs, and really make it happen at fast stroke rates when they're trying to go fast, and at appropriate stroke rates when they're trying to go a little bit slower. So what's the challenge in helping swimmers learn to improve their timing? First of all, timing is going to be very precise. It's going to be very subtle. And small differences that you probably can't even see can lead to major changes in speed. And these subtleties, this nuance, can't necessarily be simplified into words. And so while you can have the concept of separating the arms and the legs, and that's going to be an effective principle, what swimmers have to do to feel that and how to change that depending on how fast they're going is a lot more difficult. And it's going to be really tough to tell them exactly what to do. So we want to put them in positions where they can feel and figure out what they need to do in a lot of different situations. The other challenge is that it's pretty easy to be aggressive. It's pretty easy to be patient. It's hard to do both at the same time within the same stroke cycle with both the arms and the legs. So the limbs need to be able to move fast, and they need to be able to move slow in an alternating fashion. So the arms are going to recover really fast, and then they're going to be patient as they either wait or build into the pull. Likewise with the legs, there's going to be a really fast recovery of the legs. Then they're going to be effective with the kick, and then they have to wait in order to initiate the next recovery. And so that combination can be really tough for swimmers to feel and understand. There's also no perfect timing. You can't tell a swimmer exactly what they need to do to execute perfect timing because it changes with speed. So swimmers are going to have to be able to modify what they do to change how fast they want to go. Effective timing also changes between individuals based upon their kicking abilities and their pulling abilities, as well as their alignment. So if you look back at the first swimmer we watched, he had really great alignment, really great kick, and that allowed him to be a lot more patient in the front of the stroke. If a swimmer's creating more resistance, they have a terrible kick, they can't afford to swim with that timing because they have to get back into the next pull to start creating speed again. Timing also changes with fatigue. And a perfect example of this is in 200 breaststroke races, a lot of times you'll see swimmers pick up the stroke rate on the last 50 because, again, with fatigue, with a smaller amount of time that they have left to swim, they're going to use a different timing. It's not going to be the same timing throughout a single race, and that's a nuance that swimmers have to be able to manage and control in order to create the speed that they want. So even though breaststroke timing is relatively simple from a conceptual standpoint, we have all these challenges we have to overcome, which is one of the reasons that a lot of swimmers really struggle to improve and maintain effective breaststroke timing. So now let's talk solutions. We have to find a way for swimmers to feel these key skills. We're going to have to find a way to help them understand the balance between aggression and patience. And we're going to have to help them learn how to modify their timing for the different events as they fatigue and figure out the best timing that's going to work well for them. We're going to go over 3 different drills that can be really useful for helping swimmers feel these key skills. Then we're going to go over 3 performance strategies that you can use with any drills and regular breaststroke swimming as well, so you can further help swimmers figure out how to swim with great timing, do so consistently, and do so reliably. Underwater breaststroke is probably my starting point for helping swimmers execute great breaststroke timing because for whatever reason, they always seem to do it really, really well. Swimmers of all ability levels seem to execute great timing when they swim breaststroke underwater. They go the arms, then they go the legs. They go the arms, then they go the legs. They go the arms, then they go the legs. They seem to be able to feel losses of speed, so they change the stroke to minimize speed loss. And so that's a really powerful tool. It's a really powerful strategy because instantly you can help swimmers feel how to execute great breaststroke timing, even though they're underwater. So while it's pretty easy to get a powerful change, implementation here is critical so you can actually help them learn to do that skill, execute that timing when they're actually swimming breaststroke. So you want to integrate it into full stroke swimming whenever you can. So you do a 25 underwater, you do a 25 over the surface. So you're alternating and incorporating underwater breaststroke with other drills or full stroke breaststroke swimming so they can learn how to do it on the surface. You also want to challenge it in a lot of different ways, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but stuff like using speed, using resistance, different stroke counts, different stroke rates. So that's all going to help them learn how to modify and be really effective with underwater breaststroke and therefore their timing. The only thing that doesn't make this a perfect drill is that it's performed underwater. And so you have that hypoxic challenge, which can make it more difficult, especially with younger swimmers. They're not really good at holding their breath and it may not necessarily be safe. So you have to be creative with how you use it and how you can get a lot of repetitions in, even though they have to manage that lack of oxygen. If you can navigate those challenges, it's really, really effective for helping swimmers learn how to time their breaststroke swimming. So if we watch this particular swimmer here, this is actually the first time she had ever done this drill. I didn't tell her anything. I just told her to swim underwater, and she's executing these skills correctly. So arms, and then legs. Arms, and then legs. And so she's kicking when her hands are in line, and she's pulling when the legs are in line. And so that's exactly what we're looking for. That's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And it tends to happen really naturally. And once we can get them in the right positions with the right basic skills, then we can start to challenge them to really help them take the next level and become a lot more resilient and a lot more effective with their timing. Next strategy is add kicks and add pulls. So 2 pulls, 1 kick, 3 pulls, 1 kick, 3 kicks, 1 pull, 2 kicks, 1 pull. And so these drills are typically thought of as strategies for improving the pull or the kick. I think they're even better for improving timing. And that's because there's a necessary separation of the arms and the legs. So the arms are going to be moving when the legs are not, or the legs are going to be moving when the arms are not. And that's the timing that we want to help swimmers feel. We want to feel how to move the arms when the legs are in streamline, how to move the legs when the arms are in streamline. By adding extra kicks or pulls, the arms or the legs are going to be held in really long positions, because if they're doing extra kicks, they're going to stay in streamline with the arms, and they get used to feeling those positions while still executing either a kick or a pull. So the nature of the drill really forces separation, and that's exactly what we're looking for. The other thing is that it helps swimmers learn how to create separation and have really high limb speeds. As we saw in the 100 swimmer earlier, he still had to move his limbs really fast, but he still had to create separation. And again, aggression and patience, making sure that those exist simultaneously, is difficult to do. And so if you have swimmers do 2 pulls, 1 kick really fast, they're going to move the arms really fast, but there's still separation between the arms and the legs. So they learn how to be patient with either the arms or the legs, and they learn how to be aggressive with the opposite, whether that's the arms or the legs. And that's a really key skill, is it can help them feel how to be aggressive and how to be patient. And again, they can't really do it wrong. By the nature of the drill, they have to move the arms when the legs aren't moving, or they have to move the legs when the arms aren't moving. So it's a really great tool because it almost encourages or forces swimmers to have good timing, and we can do it at a lot of different speeds, which can help them feel how to be patient and aggressive. So if we watch here, he's going to take 2 pulls, and then he's going to take a kick. 2 pulls, and then a kick. And so what's going to happen is those legs are going to stay in position when he takes that first pull, and then he's got to figure out how to slide those legs in. So he's practicing keeping the legs long, which is exactly what we want. Here, we're going to add a kick, and if you watch, he's going to take that second kick, and his arms are going to be in streamline, everything's going to be in line. So again, we're creating that separation. We're helping him feel how to move the legs independently of the arms, and when those arms are in front, he can practice kicking really fast and still being patient with the upper body, which again, is a key skill that we're trying to help swimmers learn to have better effective breaststroke time. The last drill that I really like to use, I call delay breaststroke. And so while the first drills more or less encourage swimmers to have effective timing and in some ways required it, this approach is a little bit more cognitive, but it helps swimmers figure out and feel how to change their timing to change their speed. So what swimmers are going to do is they're going to pull, they're going to wait, they're going to delay the kick, and then they're going to kick. So they're going to consciously separate arms and legs. Pull, wait, kick. They're going to get separation because they're choosing to do so. And then they can learn to change how much separation they have in order to create speed. So what this is really helpful for is helping them learn how to control their timing by increasing or decreasing the separation. That can create speed without having to change effort or limb speed. So if they have a really big space between the arms and the legs, they're not going to swim super fast. If they can shrink that down to almost nothing, they're going to swim faster even if they don't change anything else. And so that's a really important thing for them to learn, is that they can control their timing, and they can control their timing to create speed. And the more they have control, the more likely it is they're going to be able to get their timing back when they lose it, whether that's in practice, whether that's in warm-up, or even when that's in the middle of a race. If they panic a little bit, they kind of freak out, they overswim it a little bit. If they have control, they can find a way to get it back. And I've seen swimmers save races because they had the skill, the awareness to control their timing, and this is a great way to help swimmers learn it. So if we watch here, he's going to pull, he's going to wait, he's going to kick. Pull, wait, kick. And so he's keeping the delay the same here. What you can have swimmers do is you can mess around with different amounts of delays while they're descending or building or whatever you want to do. But the idea here is that there's conscious separation between the arms and the legs. Once they can feel that, once they can control that, then we can start to influence that to help them learn how to find better timing, adjust their timing, and ultimately swim faster. Regardless of the drills you're using, or if you're just swimming full stroke breaststroke, adding speed can be really powerful for helping swimmers change and influence and improve their timing. We showed in the videos, speed affects timing, and so if swimmers can be exposed to different speeds, they're more likely to be able to figure out how to control their timing. You want to have swimmers learn how to execute great timing in a lot of different situations, and you want to use speed and manipulate speed in order to create those different situations. The more situations they can perform in, the more control. And if swimmers have control, they're going to be able to choose their timing. They can choose their timing, they can influence it and use that in order to swim faster. And so using building strategies and descending strategies to create variation is key. You can have them build within laps, you can have them build within swims, you can have them descend, you can do a lot of different things, but by having them switch up the speed, they're going to have to make adjustments in their timing, and that's how they're going to learn to execute great timing. You can change the speed of the drills, and swimmers are going to have to change their timing as well. Higher speeds, they have to be more and more precise. They got to shrink those gaps, but still create enough space. And then on lower speeds, they have to learn how to be patient and really execute great position, great posture in between those spaces, or they're really going to struggle to hold their speed. So more speed is not necessarily better, but lots of different speeds, but using a lot of different speeds is really effective for helping swimmers learn better timing. Next up is changing stroke counts and stroke rates. That's going to require swimmers to change their timing. If they have to move their arms faster, timing is going to change. If they have to move their arms slower, timing is going to change. If they have to take more strokes or less strokes, that's going to change their timing as well. And so lower counts, lower stroke rates, that's going to stretch the stroke out. They're going to have to learn how to manage it with more space. Higher stroke counts, faster stroke rates, that's going to compress the stroke. They're going to have to figure out how to manage it at higher rates. And just as with speed, variation is going to be key. You can have them descend stroke counts and rates. You can have them ascend stroke counts and rates. You can have them alternate between faster and slower, higher or lower. And you can also add in speed requirements for some of these. So the idea here is getting swimmers to execute in a lot of different situations. The more situations, the better. And challenging stroke counts, stroke rates is a great way to do it. Last up is using resistance. And so resistance will tend to slow down the limbs, which means that it takes longer to get through a stroke cycle, and that means things are happening slower, so it tends to be a little bit easier for swimmers to figure out and feel what they're doing and then adjust what they're doing. And that's true even when they're trying to swim really fast because everything's happening sort of like in slow motion. Resistance also demands continuous propulsion, and so swimmers have to learn how to create propulsion with the arms and the legs and really shrink that space, because if they're using a really big space, a really big glide between the arms and the legs, they're going to get punished and they're going to slow down. So it can help them be a lot more precise with how much space they can create and trying to get that down to almost zero so that they're having more continuous propulsion, but they're still not overlapping the stroke too much where they're hitting the gas, hitting the brakes at the same time. It's also simply different. Swimmers have to figure out timing in a lot of different ways. Different types of resistance are going to feel different. They're going to have a little bit different impact. And the more different situations, the more context swimmers can master, the more robust their timing is going to be. And that's ultimately what we want. We don't want swimmers that can just execute perfect timing in one situation when everything is set up for them to be successful. We want them to be able to hit great timing in a lot of different ways in a lot of different situations so that no matter what, it's just kind of there. And that means it's going to be a lot more resilient when it comes to racing. And that's really what the whole purpose of all of this is. We want to get them in situations where they can race effectively, race consistently, and resistance is another way to make that happen. So here's a breaststroke timing set, and that's a little bit more focused on skill than anything else. So they're going to go 1250s. They're going to go odds underwater breaststroke, evens delay breaststroke. The first 6, they're going to take one less stroke in pairs. The second 6, they're going to take one more stroke in pairs. That's going to challenge them to change their timing, and they're already using really effective timing drills. They're going to have to manage that as they go through. 350s breaststroke, slight descend 1 to 3, get a little bit faster as they go. Then they're going to go 1225s, same idea, except now it's 2 kicks, 1 pull, and then 2 pulls, 1 kick. Again, they're going to separate the arms and the legs, but they're going to do it in a slightly different way. 3 more 50s, slight descend 1 to 3. Then they're going to move into 2025s. They're going to use all the drills. Underwater, 2 kicks, 1 pull, 2 pulls, 1 kick, delay breaststroke, and then regular breaststroke. So they're really experiencing timing in a lot of different ways. And we're going to change how they perform each round. Round 1, they're trying to minimize stroke count all the 25s. Number 2, they're going to build them all. Round 3, they're going to minimize stroke count and time. And then round 4 is going to be strong effort. So again, lots of different ways to challenge the skills. We're using multiple different drills, and we're challenging them from different performance perspectives. It's going to give them the best chance to figure out what kind of timing, how to make it work, and how to be successful in any situation. This set a little bit more of an endurance quality to it, so they're going to go 2 rounds through of 950s and 950s, so they've got 3650s total. So they're going to go 350s as underwater breaststroke plus breaststroke. They're going to descend 1 to 3 at the same stroke count. And then the same thing, 2 pulls, 1 kick. So the idea there is they're going to lock in the skills on the drill and then try to make it happen on the regular breaststroke. And we're going to challenge them to descend 1 to 3 at the same stroke count, being just as efficient and finding ways to create speed. So they're going to have to execute the drill well, and they're going to have to make it happen when they swim, and they've got to do that under some performance pressure. The next half of the set, it's done the same way, except now they have to descend at the same stroke rate. So they can't pick up the rate, but they have to go faster. They got to be locked in with their timing. They got to make sure everything's happening well, creating space, recovering fast, and finding ways to go fast. The second round through, they're going to add a stroke on the first half of the set, and they're going to use a faster stroke rate the second half of the set. They should be able to go faster as a result. So we're having them do the drills, we're having them back that up with some swimming, and we're challenging them from a performance standpoint to find the most effective way to execute great timing. This last set is a little bit more of a speed set, so they're going to go 4 rounds through, 25 underwater breaststroke, 2 kicks, 1 pull, 2 pulls, 1 kick, delay breaststroke, and then regular breaststroke. Those are all minimized stroke count and time, so they're going to have to be long and fast at the same time. And we're going to go breaststroke fast, just let it rip, let it happen. By round, we're going to change the resistance so that they're challenged in an additional way. So in round 1, we're going to put drag socks on the feet. That's going to really slow down their legs, but not their arms. They still have to find a way to be efficient. The second round, the whole body's going to be slowed down, so they got to manage that. And then on the third round, we're going to slow down their arms, but not their legs, and that's going to further challenge them to be effective with great timing. Last round, no resistance. They just let it rip. And so this set, give them a little bit more rest, let them go a little bit faster. They have to be efficient and fast, and they have to do it in a lot of different ways with different types of resistance, different types of drills, and then they have to put it all together with a 25 breaststroke fast at the end of each round and really try to execute great timing. So this is a great way to challenge their timing, help them be really resilient, and help them figure out how to do it at speed. Pullouts are an absolute difference maker in breaststroke. Swimmers can be mediocre breaststrokers, but have absolutely terrific pullouts, and especially in short course swimming, can allow them to have really fast overall breaststroke times. In contrast, you have some swimmers that are excellent breaststrokers, but really struggle with their pullouts, and as a result, they lose races they otherwise shouldn't lose. Let's fix that. While the pullouts are almost a completely separate skill as compared to regular breaststroke swimming, if swimmers want to optimize and maximize their speed in breaststroke, they have to get better at pullouts. And while pullouts can seem like a mystery to those that struggle with them, fast pullouts are determined by the same basic principles that we see in all the other strokes. Swimmers have to have great alignment, they have to create a lot of propulsion, and they have to do so with good timing. So if swimmers can figure out those skills, they can improve their pullouts. Let's find out how to make it happen. So why do pullouts matter? Well, for swimmers that are good at them, they can make up 50% and sometimes even more of short course races. So having great pullouts becomes a tremendous advantage if swimmers can execute them really well, and it also becomes a terrible liability if swimmers are really poor at them. I'm sure you've seen it when both swimmers hit the wall, come off the wall at the same time, and then one swimmer ends up a body length ahead, and that's just off one wall. And so the impact, even if it's not as significant, starts to get bigger and bigger with each and every wall. And so if swimmers can establish that advantage over other swimmers, they're going to have a huge advantage. And if they're falling behind by a significant amount each wall, they're going to be at a disadvantage that even the best swimmer is going to struggle to overcome. Beyond the speed element, there's also the issue of what they cost. Pullouts are simply easier. So if swimmers can cover more distance at the same or faster speeds and with less effort, that's going to make it so much easier to execute and sustain their speed even on the surface for that much longer throughout the course of a race. And further, if swimmers can take fewer strokes because they're creating so much speed under the water with their pullouts, that's also going to allow them to sustain their skills more effectively during the last part of their race because they simply haven't done as much swimming, and they've also not used as much energy because they're creating so much distance and speed off the wall. So if swimmers can get better at pullouts, they'll have more speed, and that speed will potentially cost them less energy, which means they can finish even better. So what makes a great pullout? As I mentioned earlier, it all comes down to alignment, it comes down to propulsion, and it comes down to timing. So from an alignment perspective, swimmers need to be in a great streamline coming off the wall. They need to be in a great streamline coming out of the pullout itself. And then when they transition to the surface, they need to make sure that that angle is appropriate, and they need to recover the arms and the legs as smoothly and as efficiently and with as little resistance as possible to maintain as much speed as possible. And of course, in order to continue to move forward, swimmers have to create a lot of propulsion, both with the big pullout itself and with the dolphin kick. The more propulsion swimmers can create, the more speed they're going to generate, the further they're going to go, the more effective the pullout's going to be. Finally, there's an issue of timing, and the primary considerations are when do swimmers actually start the pullout and how can they more smoothly transition to the surface. So if swimmers take their pullout right away as soon as their feet leave the wall, they're going to be taking their pullout when they're traveling really fast, and they're going to be moving faster than they can actually do their pullout. So they're much better off waiting until they've slowed down. However, if they wait forever until they literally stop, that's not going to be good either, because then they're going to have to reaccelerate and they're not going to maintain their speed. Same thing goes with when did they decide to transition to the surface. Most swimmers are not going to immediately pull out and then immediately recover the hands, although it should happen pretty quick. There needs to be some sort of delay in order to ride that speed off the pullout. But again, they don't want to wait too long because they have to get up to the surface without losing speed, and they have to get up at the right angle. So they have to time those components effectively, trying to minimize the loss of speed and keep speed as consistent as possible. So if we watch these swimmers here, what we'll see, you can see their body is super straight. There's a super tight streamline. They're creating great alignment, and they're not creating much resistance. So that's the first step, is they've got to have really good alignment when they're gliding in order to maintain as much speed as possible when they do glide. Now, when it comes to creating propulsion, we're going to see that kick there. It's going to be tight. It's going to be snappy. It's going to be fast. And then if we watch the arm pull here, he's going to set up. He's going to have a great surface area. You can see most of his forearm is facing backwards, his hands facing backwards. He's going to get that set up pretty far in front of the stroke. He's going to hold that position all the way through. Even there, everything's still facing backwards, and then finish really tight. And again, you watch that streamline. He's being really, really tight with the streamline, and that's going to allow him to maintain as much speed as possible after the pullout itself. Then he's going to recover the arms nice and tight to the body as he transitions to the surface, and then he gets out of that position fast. He recovers the feet fast because, again, this is going to be a position that's going to be creating a lot of resistance, and so he needs to get out of that position fast, and then boom, back into a streamline, and he's up at the surface of the water. So again, streamline, solid kick, powerful pull, really great streamline, and then a smooth transition to the surface. He's keeping everything tight with his recovery. He's keeping everything fast with the leg recovery. And if you notice, it's a smooth transition up. He's never angling up to the surface. He's just kind of floating up to the surface. And that minimizes the amount of resistance he creates when he does that. So same skill now coming off the wall. So again, really tight streamline. She's going to wait for it before setting it up. Snappy dolphin kick. Pull out. Gets those arms facing backwards, pretty far in front of her body. Pulling back with that, keeping the forearms and the hands oriented backwards. And then again, really tight streamline. Waiting for it. Recovering the arms tight to the body. Recovering the legs fast. And then transitioning to the surface. So again, she's obviously executing the pull out a little bit differently than the first person. However, it's the same principles, and that's what's going to create speed for an effective pull out. So we see some swimmers that have really good pullouts, and we see a lot of swimmers that have not very good pullouts. So why is that happening? Why is it so difficult to improve pullouts? The biggest challenge is that it's hard to get a lot of really relevant practice. Each pullout is going to be a single effort. You do it, and then you start over. And unfortunately, it's hard to do multiple relevant pullouts within one lap. You kind of push off the wall. That's a huge part of it. You do the pullout, and then the swimmer's 12.5 meters down the pool, and they're kind of left with nothing else to do. They can't really do another one. And so there's going to be a lot of time between pullouts when done within the context of a normal practice. It's also difficult to recreate racing conditions other than doing a lot of pace 50s. But if you're doing a lot of pace 50s, a lot of pace 25s, they're still not going to get very many pullout opportunities, and it's going to be really tiring, really exhausting. It's not something that can be done constantly. So the big challenge is how do you get a lot of practice working on the relevant skills without just completely exhausting swimmers. Similarly, swimmers don't get a lot of feedback as to why they're not executing great pullouts, what they can improve, and whether they improved or not. And those factors are all really key for driving progress. If they don't know what was wrong, it's hard to know how to improve. And again, if swimmers don't have a lot of practice, they're not getting great feedback, that learning curve is going to be really, really slow. It's going to take a long time to make progress, or in some cases, Swimmers simply don't make progress because they just don't get enough practice. And when they do get practice, they don't get enough good feedback as to whether what they're doing is effective or not. And if they don't have that feedback, they're not going to be able to make the changes they need in order to improve. When it comes to getting better at pullouts, we have to find solutions that overcome those challenges. We have to help swimmers get a lot of practice, and it has to be as relevant practice as possible. And we need to create situations where they get a lot of feedback. And the feedback can take place in many different forms, but most importantly, it has to let swimmers know whether they were being effective or not effective and allow them the opportunity to create change. So if we can get a lot more practice, if we can get a lot more feedback, if we can get better feedback, they're going to be able to improve faster, and they're going to be able to create the changes that we want to see that are going to allow them to have more effective pullouts. So the first aspect is working on the pull itself. If swimmers have a really terrible pull, even if they have great alignment, they've got great timing, they're simply not going to get much distance. They're simply not going to get much speed on the pullout itself. So the three basic exercises that I like to use are wall pull, which is when they put their hands on the deck when they're in the pool, or they put their hands in the gutter and they press straight down with their whole forearm. That's going to help them feel the position they want to get in and how to create pressure on the water from that position. Then you can have power pulls, which they're basically doing a pull out on the surface, trying to take that same principle that they felt in the wall pull, the position and the pressure, and execute that, pulling straight back in order to move themselves forward. Then you can take that same basic skill and then just do pull downs underwater, where you're just focusing on moving water backwards, pulling straight backwards. You're not worrying about the recovery up to the surface or anything like that. And so the idea here is just help swimmers learn to move more water. They need to get a great surface area. They need to hold that surface area over a big range of motion. They need to accelerate the pull. So by doing the wall pulls, they can feel it. By doing the power pulls, they can start to execute it in the water. And by doing the power pull downs, they can start to make it happen under the water. We're keeping it simple, and we're giving them the opportunity to get a lot of practice working on these skills. So the idea here is to put the arms in a position where they're going to create a big surface area in the water. They're going to use the whole forearm, and then they're going to create pressure in that position in order to move the body forward. And that's how they're going to learn how to move a lot of water, is get in the right positions, learn how to create pressure in those positions, and that sets the foundation for everything else that they need to learn. Next up is power pulls. So they're going to take that same basic concept and they're going to execute it on the surface of the water. So the idea here is to set up the stroke early, hold a lot of water, and move a lot of water straight back to pull the body straight forward. And so they can do a lot of repetitions over the course of a 25. They can get a lot of practice with it. And again, it builds off the previous skill because they're focusing on setting up the stroke and then pulling straight back, creating a lot of pressure using the whole arm to move the body forward. And then next, they're just going to execute that same skill under the water. And so they're not worrying about the recovery of the arms and the legs. They're just thinking about setting it up, getting a good pull, and then really letting it rip. So they're trying to feel the acceleration forward. They're creating that same position with the arm and then creating pressure in that position and holding that pressure all the way through the back of the stroke. That's what we're looking for. And we start with a wall pull. You finish with the power pull downs. It's a simple way to challenge these skills and a simple way to help swimmers feel and learn to build those skills. Now, to help swimmers learn to get more out of each pull, to help those drills become more effective, to enhance the feedback, to enhance the learning, we can use both resistance and hand postures. The goal is to help swimmers learn to move more water with each pull. And so by using the resistance, we can change the feedback. So they're going to get even more pressure on the arm. They're going to feel that. They're going to become more aware of what they're doing with the arms as they pull them back. And the resistance in it of itself is going to encourage more direct force application. They're going to have to create more force to move themselves forward, and they're going to have to apply those forces more effectively. If they're just moving the arms side to side, that's not going to help them move forward to overcome the resistance. They have to learn to apply pressure backwards and create a lot of pressure in order to overcome the resistance. And then when that resistance is gone, they use the same skills. That means a lot more speed in the pullout. By using different hand postures, again, we're going to change what they feel. We're going to change how they're interacting with the water. And by using closed fists, by using upside down paddles, by using different types of paddles, by using single paddles, by using one closed fist at a time, we're going to encourage the use of the forearm, and we're going to change what they feel. That's going to get their attention. That's going to help them become more aware of the options for creating a lot of propulsion, for creating a lot of pressure. And by combining the two, we can magnify the impact of either one. Resistance is good, hand postures are good. Combining them and using both strategies at the same time is going to make it even more effective. because we can use different types of resistance, different hand postures, and with different drills and lots of different combinations, we're going to get lots of variation, lots of variety, and that means more novelty as well. And that's going to allow swimmers to continue to learn because they're doing the same things and they're doing them in different ways. And that's going to continue to challenge them rather than just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Another strategy that can be really useful is cord work. It can be really effective because it allows swimmers to get a lot of high quality repetitions. The tension of the cord requires swimmers to set up the stroke immediately or they're going to get pulled backwards, and they have to hold water throughout or they're going to get pulled backwards as well. So they're getting immediate feedback as to whether they're executing their pullouts effectively or not. Because if they're not, they're simply going to get pulled backwards and they're going to be able to feel that right away. And so there's two different variations that I like. The first is stationary pullouts, and that's where the swimmers are going to be against a cord. They're going to be in the middle of the pool, and they're going to be trying to maintain their position by executing pullouts on the surface of the water. And so again, if they don't recover the arms fast, a key skill in the pullout, and if they don't set up the stroke fast and hold those positions throughout the entire stroke, they're going to get pulled backwards. They get a lot of practice and a lot of feedback. Short cord pullouts, they're going to be with a really short cord or a double wrapped cord. They're going to be pushing off the wall, executing a pullout, and then getting yanked back. They have to execute multiple skills well here, or they're going to get pulled all over the place, or they're not going to be able to get out very far at all. They don't have a strong push, they're not going to get very far. They don't have effective alignment, they're going to get pulled out of position, and they're going to get pulled out of position when the cord brings them back. And again, if they don't have a powerful pull, they're not going to get out very far either. And just like with the stationary cord, all that tension, that's going to give them a lot of feedback as to how effective they're being with their pullout itself. And the tension on their body is going to give them a lot of feedback as to whether they're aligned or not. If they're out of alignment, even just a little bit, and the cord starts pulling them back, they're going to get pulled back all over the place. They want to get pulled straight back. So here's stationary pullouts. You can see she's just on the surface and she's getting pulled back. And so you can see even when she recovers, she starts getting pulled back a little bit. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. She's got to recover the arms really fast, and she's got to set up the stroke quickly and pull effectively, or else she's going to get yanked back. So again, a lot of feedback in terms of the quality of the pull, and if she's not in good positions, she's not creating good positions quickly, she's going to get pulled back. So with short cord pullouts, she's going to do a pullout, and she's going to get pulled back. So push off, pull out, and then get pulled back. And so if she's not doing a good job with her alignment, she's going to get pulled side to side. She's not getting a good push. She's not going to get out far. And then if she's not having an effective pullout, she's not going to be able to get far out either. And so the goal is to get as far as she can, and she's got to execute all those skills really well and control her alignment, or else that cord is going to be really unforgiving. It's not going to allow her to get out far, and it's going to pull her back out of alignment, giving her a lot of feedback that she wasn't in good alignment when she pushed off the wall or when she executed her pullout. So if you watch really good swimmers, you watch good pullouts, you'll see that the dolphin kick is executed in a little bit different way with different swimmers. You'll have some swimmers that have a really small kick, some that have a pretty big kick, some that execute the kick early before the pullout, and some after the pullout. So it's not always clear exactly the most effective way to do it, the most effective time to do it. So rather than just prescribing what swimmers should do, or just assuming that what they already do is the most effective way to do it, having them explore different types of kicks can be really useful to help them figure out what's going to be the best for them. So you can change the size of the kick, have them alternate between really big kicks, really small kicks. You can change the timing of the kick, have them kick early before the pullout, have them kick really late after the pullout, and let them play with things in between. By doing it in many different ways, by doing it in different combinations, you're going to help them figure out what's going to be best for them. And especially if you're having them do it with some sort of speed expectation, that's going to give them feedback as to what's fast as well. So again, rather than prescribing exactly how they should execute the kick, let them explore the different options, try to get some speed measurements on it, and let them figure it out. Each swimmer is going to be a little bit different, and that's okay. What matters most is they're constantly trying to figure out what's going to work best for them, and sooner than later, they're going to figure out the best solution, and they're going to learn to execute that at a really high level. One of the key skills in having great pullouts is having a really great streamline both before the pullout and after the pullout. And unfortunately, it's a skill that many swimmers struggle with, and more importantly, they really struggle to improve it. So if we can create awareness of their alignment and how much resistance is being created, and whenever they're under the water, whenever they're doing pullouts, we can help them learn how to feel better ways to move and organize their body to go through the water, and that's going to create less resistance and more speed. So there's 3 different strategies you can use here. The first is overspeed. So especially using fins, that extra speed means more drag, which means swimmers can feel the resistance that they're creating as they move through the water. And if they can feel it, then they can start to change it. So by having them swim even faster than normal, they can start to feel where they're creating resistance and they can start to try to eliminate it. You can also have them wear clothing such as t-shirts or shorts, and that's going to create more resistance on their body wherever the clothing is. And just as importantly, when they take that clothing off, they're going to feel the water flowing all over their body, and that's going to help them feel where they create more resistance. They'll be able to feel the flow of the water over their body. They'll be able to feel the pressure on their body. They'll be able to feel where there's more resistance, preventing the body from moving forward. Again, it's all about helping them feel it. Finally, you can have them wear a weight belt, and that's going to help create more awareness of where their hips are, what everything's doing, how they're controlling their alignment, how they're positioning their torso. And again, like with the clothing, once they take that off, they're going to be better able to manage their position and control it in order to create speed through better alignment. Once you've done a lot of work with all the previous strategies, you've really worked on the components of the pullout, you can start having swimmers execute more pullouts, doing double pullouts during training sets. So this gives them more practice in relevant conditions, and because they're training, there's usually some sort of time expectation, so they're learning how to create speed and getting feedback as to whether they do create speed or not when they actually execute their pullouts. So if they're supposed to go 30 seconds for a 50, they have to still go 30 seconds, even if they're taking double pullouts. And if they're really good at pullouts, they want to see if they can go even faster than that. And so if they're not really good at the pullouts, they're really struggling with it, those slow pullouts are going to get punished. It's going to be a lot harder to swim fast, and that's going to encourage swimmers to try to figure out, use the skills that they've been working on in order to create more speed. If they can get faster when they're executing double pullouts, that means their pullouts are more than likely improving. And if those pullouts are improving in practice sooner than later, they're going to start improving in races. And beyond the skill of executing pullouts, at some level, swimmers have to manage their breath control as well, because even if they have great pullouts, but they have to bail on it halfway through because they can't hold their breath, that's a problem as well. So performing more double pullout can be useful for helping swimmers extend the amount of time that they can manage underwater without rushing or panicking their strokes. So let's check out some sets. So the first one here, 2 rounds through, they're going to go 4 25s, power pulls with a buoy. They're going to take 1 less stroke per 25, so they have to get more out of each pullout each time. Then they're going to go 4 25s, triple pullout. The odds, they're going to change the kick timing each rep. The evens, they're going to change the kick size each rep. So they're really playing with the dolphin kick here. They're trying to figure out what works. Then they're going to go 4 times, 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, stationary cord pullouts. So again, trying to create a lot of propulsion, hold their position on the surface of the water against the resistance. Then we're going back to those 25s, change the kick size. Then we're going to go 4 25s power pull down, minimize stroke count and time. So now they have to create speed and efficiency during those pull downs. The only way they're going to do that is with really great skills. And then we'll finish it off, 4 more 25s, triple pull out. Again, changing the kick timing each rep on the odds and the kick size on the evens. Now, one more thing is before each 25, they're going to do 10 seconds of wall pull before each repetition. Again, really groove that position, really groove the ability to create pressure in that position as well. So a lot of repetitions here, all pretty relevant context. Sets like this can help swimmers learn to execute these skills better over time, and in this particular case, improve the power of the pull and the effectiveness of their dolphin kick. This set, they're going to continue to work on the pull itself. They're going to go 4 times 4 reps of a short cord pull out. So they're going to do 4 short cord pullouts on one breath, and then they're going to stop. They're going to do that 4 times. Then they're going to go 2 25s power pull downs. The first one is as few strokes as possible, trying to get as much distance as possible with each pull. And then the second one, they just have to go as fast as possible. They're going to do the whole thing 6 rounds. And on the short cord pullouts, to really encourage them to learn to use the hands, use the arms more effectively, they're going to go single tennis ball on round 1 and 4. They're going to go single paddle on round 2 and 5. And on rounds 3 and 6, the odd reps, they're going to go upside down paddles. The even reps, they're going to go regular hands. So again, challenging them to learn to create propulsion with the hands in different ways. That's going to expand their skill set. We've got the resistance, and then they can actually try to apply it during the power pull downs. And rather than just trying to feel it during the power pull downs, they're getting measured on skill. They've got to create as few strokes as possible on the odds, which one, they're going to have great alignment, and they're going to have a great pull. The second one, it's all about creating speed. And again, if they don't have great alignment, they don't have a great pull, they're not going to be effective in that either. And so just like the previous round, lots of repetitions, lots of high quality repetitions, which is going to accelerate learning. Last set, they're going to go 4 rounds through. They're going to start off with 225s power pulls with parachute and upside down paddles. Those are fast. So the parachute is going to require them to create more propulsion and to do so more effectively. The upside down paddles is going to require them to use the forearms. Then they're going to go 425s power pull downs, fins in a t-shirt. The odds are minimized stroke count and time. The evens are fast. So what we're trying to accomplish there, the fins, that's going to create more speed. That means they can feel the drag. The t-shirt's going to create even more drag on the upper body. Those two training aids are going to interact, create even more resistance, and swimmers are going to be able to feel that. And it's not just that they'll feel it, they have to actually perform there, minimizing stroke count and time and going fast on the evens. Then they'll take all that gear off, and they're going to go 50 breaststroke, double pullouts, start strong, descend 1 to 4. So we're working on the propulsion, we're working on the alignment, and then we're giving swimmers the chance to make that all happen, and they can measure their performance along the way to see if they're effective at actually executing these skills in a way that creates speed. If you want to learn more about the key skills in executing great pullouts, check out the video below.